So maybe you should come and work with me. I need a smart guy, organized guy, a guy I could trust. And I always thought you were smart, so I think that maybe we could work together. And so I told him, well, how much money have you made, right? Like, well, how much money do you have right now? And he's like, oh, I'm going to tell you, but only to inspire you. I'm not bragging, okay? And he opens up his computer and he logs into his bank account, and I see in his bank account he has $1.8 million in the bank.
And how old was he?
He was 18 years old.
Oh.
We're here, so we're vacation from the studios.
Do you go down there ever? I was just there a few months.
Yeah. St. Charles, Elgin, Naperville,
in the Jewish area, she's like Skokie. Skokie? Okay, yeah. Because there's like a famous school there. Hey, how you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. You've been doing this podcast for me.
Oh man, we started January this year, I think.
Cool.
Yeah. We tested it out. We were doing a few that we didn't post, and then
gotcha.
we're just trying to get the whole thing down.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to No Offense. We are extremely excited for today's episode. We are in Miami today. We got David Packouz on. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Crazy story, serial entrepreneur, wild with what happened with AEY, which we're going to dive into. He's got a lot of startups now that he's working on, and super excited to have him on here. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, yeah, I guess you know what? We kind of want to dive into the backstory of what's been going on. The whole story behind Wardogs and what happened with everything. And I'll be honest with you, Wardogs has probably been my favorite movie since it came out.
We've all watched it so many times.
It's been like a dream to to talk to you about everything that's going on here.
And you got to work on that movie too, right?
I did, yeah. They bought my life rights, as they call it.
Did they?
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
How did that whole thing get set up?
You mean the movie?
Wise, yeah.
The movie? There was a Rolling Stone article that came out in 2011 that was pretty extensive. Yeah, how close do you want me to be to the mic?
I think pretty close. Yeah,
okay, so like a few inches?
Yeah,
okay.
perfect.
So there was a Rolling Stone article that came out in 2011. It was a very long article. The author, Guy Lawson, he had been researching this story for a few years. He interviewed me extensively, Efram a bit. While Efram was willing to talk to him before he went to prison.
Yeah.
And he also did a deep dive and interviewed a lot of the people on the government side. And he wrote this really long article. It was one of the longest articles that Rolling Stone ever published, interestingly. I guess because
cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because he'd been working on it for so long, for 3 years, so he had a lot to say. But when it came out, it made a big splash, and the director of the Hangover movies, Todd Phillips, he read the article, and he was like, man, this is my kind of story. I want to make a movie about this. And I thought, and then I heard he optioned the rights to the article. And then they wanted to option my life rights, which they didn't need to do. In the United States, because of the First Amendment, you can make a movie about anyone as long as their name is in the public record. So if you have like an article written about you, they could use your real name, say anything they want about you, and give you zero money for it.
Wow.
It's freedom of speech. So, but they wanted the movie to be more accurate. So more true to the real story, so they wanted me involved. So they optioned my life rights, and he was in the middle of shooting The Hangover 2 right then, so he had to finish that, and then they decided to go for The Hangover 3 because it was a sure moneymaker.
Yeah.
And then after Hangover 3 was done in 2015, he decided to shoot Wardogs, and that was his transition into more serious filmmaking. After Wardogs, he did The Joker. So that was kind of
I didn't even know that.
That's Todd Phillips. Yeah, he's a really, really good director.
So before Wardogs, all his movies were like Hangover-style movies. So they were all like kind of bro comedies, and he wanted to move in a more dramatic direction. So Wardogs is kind of half comedy, half drama. So that was kind of his transition.
Yeah, it was like labeled as a comedy, but I'm like, it is a comedy in a sense, but there's a really good story behind that.
I've heard it called a dramedy.
Oh, I like that.
Dramedy.
Yeah.
Did you expect it when he came to you to be as big of a thing as it was? Like, did you expect that, or did you know? Like, you said, Todd came to you first.
Yeah, well, he went to Guy Lawson, the author of the article, and talked to him, and because he only really needed to talk to Guy because he did all the research and everything, and once they got him on board, they decided to have me involved as well. I mean, I knew he was a big director. I'd seen the Hangover movies.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I heard that he wanted to do it, I thought he was going to make another Hangover style thing, and I was like, I'm going to look like an idiot in this movie. But I was like, whatever, you know.
No choice.
Yeah. I thought I was going to wake up, you know, wasted on pills next to a tiger or something. You know? So
Welcome to Wardogs.
yeah. So I thought it would be something like that. So I was actually pretty happy with how
Yeah.
the movie came out. I thought that it was a nice balance of comedy and drama, and most of the story was relatively accurate.
What are the
Obviously.
pieces that were
Yeah.
pretty far off? Was there anything that was like that
Yeah.
literally didn't happen?
Yeah, all the coolest parts. I'm sorry to disappoint you.
So,
yeah.
To kind of dive into that a little bit more, so kind of give a backstory of what happened and how you got involved in AEY and how you met Efram. I mean, there's like a long story.
Yeah,
behind
it's a
that,
long
but
story, right.
Yeah, kind of dive into it a little
Right,
bit. Like, you know,
right.
how did you first meet Efram?
Right.
How did that happen?
So I first met Efram. We both grew up in Orthodox Jewish families in Miami Beach, and our families both made us go to synagogue, and neither of us liked to pray. So we would sneak out of prayers and go play on the basketball court and hang out and wait for the adults to be finished praying. And he was actually 4 years younger than me. So
Okay.
in the movie they say we're the same age,
Yeah.
but he's actually 4 years younger than me. I think I was like about 15 or 16 when we first met, so he was 11 or 12. And I had friends who were 2 years younger than me. They thought he was funny because he loved pulling pranks. One thing he would love to do, you know, Orthodox Jews wear those
yarmulke?
caps, the yarmulkes,
Yep.
exactly. So he would love to sneak out, like behind like big kids and like grab it from them and go run. and according to Jewish law, you're actually not allowed to walk without it. You
Oh,
could only
really?
walk up to like 3 steps or something. I forgot the exact rule. It's been a while. So they would like get super mad. They'd have to like cover their head and run after him. Yeah, and like they'd run after him and they like beat him up and grab their yarmulkes back, and he would be like, I'm sorry. As soon as they turn around, he'd do it again. He was like one of these fearless guys. So my younger friends were very entertained by his antics. One thing I remember one thing that he. Probably the most epic prank he pulled was on the Sabbath. Orthodox Jews aren't allowed to turn lights on and off. You're not allowed to use electricity. It's kind of a bit like the Amish. You could leave your lights on for the Sabbath, but you can't turn them off during the Sabbath.
Wow.
So you can't drive a car. You can't use TV, phone. So he went into the synagogue during prayers and he turned the lights off and during the Sabbath, and nobody was allowed to turn it back on. So
terrible.
yeah, it was until they got one of the janitors who was a non-Jewish person. He was allowed to turn it on, but there's like real intricacies to it's funny because you're actually technically not allowed to ask him to turn it on, but you could hint to turn it on.
like,
Be
"Man,
like,
I
boy,
wish
it
I
would be
could
really
see."
nice if we could pray in the light right now.
A little dark in here, huh?
Yeah, it's exactly. So they had to go do a roundabout hint to the janitor, and he turned the lights on. But yeah, that was one of his epic pranks. So that's how I wasn't particularly super close to him at the time.
Sure.
He was just kind of in my circle of friends. And then when he was 16, he got kicked out of high school for smoking weed. We both went to private Jewish schools, but different schools. We weren't in the same school. And he got kicked out for smoking weed. I also got kicked out for smoking weed around the same time. And his parents sent him over to work with his uncle, who had a big pawn shop in South Central LA. And the idea was, you're not going to take school seriously. You're going to get into the real world and get a job with your uncle. And so he was moving boxes around the warehouse. And his uncle was, pawn shops sell guns, and he got obsessed with guns. He started reading about guns, going on the online gun boards, the forums, looking at all where he could buy a used gun, sell it in this other place for a little bit more. Started wheeling and dealing, all under his uncle's name because he was 16 years old. And he started getting really good at it. He became really good at wheeling and dealing, and his uncle also would bid on government contracts to the local and state police to give them equipment, handguns, ammunition, bulletproof vests, various accessories. And the way the government works is that they say they want to buy certain things. This is almost all levels of government, including the local government. They'll say they want to buy certain items, and people put in their bid. and then they decide, oh, these people are this is the lowest bid, this is the best delivery, depending on what's important to them. And so his uncle was bidding on these contracts, and he learned how to bid on the contracts with the government with his uncle. And after about 2 years of working for his uncle, they had a falling out. He claims his uncle screwed him out of money. The uncle claims he screwed him out of money.
Both are possible, huh?
I believe them both.
So you still don't know,
Yeah.
like
and nobody knows.
Really?
I mean, I'm sure they'll stick to their stories until their dying day. They are both known for screwing people over.
Okay.
So in the business community, and they've both had lawsuits back and forth, and not just against each other. I mean,
just in general.
Just in general, they're the kind of people who get sued a lot. You know what I mean?
You don't say.
There's a trend for a reason, right?
Yeah.
A lot of backstabbing.
Yeah. He's still getting sued from.
Really?
I heard recently that he's living in Mexico City now. And
Really?
Yeah, probably because he's harder to sue there.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
assuming.
Mexico City.
Yeah, he
he
probably
When
has
did
a
he get out
big
of jail?
gated. He got out a while ago. He got out I think it was in 2015 or 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's been out for a little while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moved down to Mexico.
Yeah. I don't know how recently he moved to Mexico, but that's what I heard. Yeah.
So how did you guys, growing up
Yeah.
together, you kind of in the same circle, when did
Yeah.
you guys start getting close, and how did you get turned on to kind of the
Right.
AEY structure?
Right. So when he came back, he had a falling out with his uncle, he came back to Miami and took over one of his dad's companies, called AEY Inc. His dad had started the company a few years before as a label printing business, but hadn't really been doing anything with it. So AEY, by the way, does stand for something.
I was just going to ask that. If it does. When he fired that guy, he's like, what a dick.
Yeah. Unlike in the movie where he says it just sounds cool. It actually does stand for something, and it's the initials of his dad's 3 sons. So Avrami, Efram, which is Efraim, and Yeshaya. So he's the E in AEY.
Oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's the initials of his sons. That's what it stands for. And so he took over his AEY Inc. and registered it with the government to bid on contracts. Everything was under his dad's name because he was still, I think he was like 17 when he came back to Miami. He hadn't even turned 18. He was like a few months away from turning 18. And
was his dad cool with that, with him doing it under his...
Yeah, his dad is actually a super nice guy. Very different than him. His dad, as far as I know, has always been a very straight shooter, very polite, very nice. I've never had any issues with his dad, and we used to work in the office next door. Okay. And he would always treat his dad like shit, though. He's just one of these people who'd constantly make fun of his dad for making less money than him.
Oh wow!
It's
really
nasty.
That's ruthless.
Yeah,
really ruthless.
Yeah, he was pretty nasty. He was pretty nasty. It's embarrassing for the rest of us to see how he would treat his father, but his dad was a super nice guy. His dad let him do whatever he wants. And this was in 2004. Right after the U.S. had completed the invasion of Iraq, and they were trying to build up the Iraqi democratic government. And so after they bombed everything into the ground, they had to build it back up again. And one of those things, they were ordering a whole huge amount of stuff. I think they ended up spending something like $1 trillion on that entire situation.
Incredible timing for you guys
to destroy everything and build it back up. So it was incredible timing. So there was a massive amount of money going out in contracts, and particularly for weapons and ammunition, which was his specialty. And so he started bidding on these contracts. He's very, very aggressive, a huge workaholic. So he would get the prices from everyone he could find on the internet, negotiate with them hard, then mark it up a tiny bit, bid it to the government, win the contract, give the government a whole bunch of excuses why he needed to change the price after he won. He learned all sorts of
tricks of the
trade like that in order to increase his margins. And he started making a decent amount of money. And after about a year of that, is when we bumped into each other. We bumped into each other, unlike in the movie where they show us bumping into each other at a funeral.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Damn.
It was it was at a mutual friend's house. He came over to smoke weed, and we were smoking weed together. And as people do, he's like, "What are you doing these days?" And at the time, I was in college. I was studying chemistry, and I had a few side gigs to support myself while I was in college. I was a massage therapist. That is true.
Were you also? Okay.
Yeah. No, you were gonna say.
No, go ahead.
And I also had a business where I was importing SD cards from China, buying them in bulk and selling them on eBay. Great business because they're super easy to store and easy to ship. They're tiny little things, and the margins back then were pretty good. Now, terrible.
Yeah.
But back then, this was before the Chinese had discovered that they could sell on eBay themselves. So it was a great opportunity, and I was making decent money. And I had also gotten into selling bed sheets and towels as they portray in the movie, but differently than how they portray in the movie. I wasn't going door to door with a bunch of bed sheets and trying to convince people. It was all over the phone, and I didn't even buy the bed sheets until I already had a buyer. I was just doing brokering.
Drop shipping before.
Yeah.
So they weren't in your apartment stacked up.
They were not. I did have samples in my apartment.
Okay.
So I had a few boxes of bed sheets, but it wasn't. I didn't have a stock of bed sheets that I was trying to get rid of. So I was just brokering. When I'd get an order, I'd put it in order with the factory, get my cut, do the shipping, the whole thing, the licensing, the logistics, etc. And so I told him about this, and he was like, "Oh, that's pretty much all the same thing I'm doing, finding sources, doing logistics, getting licensing. This is international trade, and you could do it with any product. I'm making way more money than you, so maybe you should come and work with me. I need a smart guy, organized guy, a guy I could trust, and I always thought you were smart, so I think that maybe we could work together." And so I told him, "Well, how much money have you made, right?" And he's like, "I'm gonna tell you, but." He's like, "Well, it's kind of complicated because I have people who owe me money. I owe people money." So I'm like, "Well, how much money do you have right now?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm going to tell you, but only to inspire you. I'm not bragging, okay?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, tell me." And so he opens up his computer and he logs into his bank account, and I see in his bank account he has $1.8 million in the bank.
And how old was he?
And he was 18 years old.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
So you're like, I could
So
do
he's a
this.
hustler. Yeah.
So
wow.
I knew his parents hadn't given him that money.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, he had earned that money. I knew
Wow.
that. And so I realized, well, this guy knows a business.
Yeah.
And he's been doing really, really well at it. Way better than I was doing, that's for sure. I wasn't doing badly. I was very comfortable at the time, but way better than all my friends who were working as waiters and bartenders.
Than any 18-year-old, really.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like 0.01%.
Yeah. So I realized he knew a business, and I was like, well, he wants me to work with him, so that's an opportunity. And so we started working together. And yeah, I don't know if you want to get into it, but our first thing was this Xbox deal that
dive into that a little bit, 'cause that was crazy.
Right. So this was right at the time that the first Xbox had been released, and they were all sold out. And people were selling it for double or triple the price on eBay. And through my connections in the SD card business, I found a connection that claimed to have, I think it was something like I don't remember the numbers anymore, but it was either 10 or 100,000 units available.
Of Xboxes?
Of Xboxes.
When they were sold out?
When they were sold out, which I thought was super weird and probably a scam.
Yeah,
it sounded like a scam. And so, but I told Efram about it, and he's like, well, I mean, you never know. Maybe a distributor put a big order and managed to lock down a certain quantity. And so we started looking into it, and he was very good at getting people to give him their source, which was super impressive because most people don't do that. 'Cause that's kind of the whole business is keeping your sources. But he would get he's like, oh, I'll sign a agreement with you that you'll get X percentage, and then it's just easier to negotiate. And he would just move up the chain, and we got through 5 layers of brokers until we got to this company, and I forget their name, but they were one of these B2B companies that are like multi-billion-dollar companies, but nobody's ever heard of them because they only sell to other businesses. And so they were like an electronics parts company.
Like a CDW.
Yeah.
Something something like that.
And they and it was like people from that company with their email addresses,
Sure.
So it wasn't like a scam. And they were offering it to us on a letter of credit basis, which means that they only get paid, they only get the money once the goods are delivered.
Wow.
So that's pretty rock solid.
Yeah.
To
so.
and made us think that maybe it wasn't a scam.
Yeah.
Because why would a multi-billion-dollar company offer us pretty good payment terms if they didn't actually have the goods? They weren't going to get the money, but they wanted $20 million, and he only had 2. So we started looking for every investor who would talk to us to try to get $18 million. We eventually talked to some hedge fund based out of New York that was almost ready to go, but at the last second they changed their mind because they said it didn't pass the smell test, which I understand is kind of a strange deal. So that whole thing fell apart, and eventually the guys who offered us the deal said, "Oh, someone else took it. You can't."
How much would you have made on that?
We would have made, if I recall correctly, we would have about doubled our money.
Wow.
Yeah,
Damn.
because we had buyers from Walmart and Target who were willing to buy the entire quantity at the same price they were going to sell it retail, because they were going to use it as a loss leader, they call it, to get people in the door. They'll be like, we're the only ones who have Xboxes, come in and buy a pair of pants also, or something.
Gotta walk all the way back to get it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They'll put it past all the other stuff they want you to buy. So they wanted to use it as a loss leader. So they said, if you guys have these units, we'll buy it at, I think it was a $400 retail price. And they were planning on breaking even just to get people in the door. So and we were buying it at a wholesale price. So we were going to about double our money. So I would have made millions of dollars there, but it didn't happen. So after that, we were very disappointed. We worked like a good solid 2 weeks on it. And he goes to me, he's like, "Hey, listen, we should get back to the business I know. I know how to make money. I know the government work. I know the arms business. So I can teach it to you, and we can make money that way." And he's like, "But I already know the arms business. So why don't you focus on a different industry? Why don't you focus on energy? You can try to deliver fuel." Because I've never done any fuel, so that way we expand the business, and you can find the opportunities, find on the government website, you find the suppliers, and then I'll come in and I'll do all the negotiating, I'll put up the money, and we'll use my company to do these deals, and we'll split the profits 50-50. So I was like, okay, that's a good deal. Yeah. I'll do the vast majority of the work. He does the guidance and the financing, so it was a good deal. I started working on that. After a couple weeks, I won my first contract. It was 50,000 gallons of propane. Made about $8 grand on it.
Okay.
So not a bad start for a few
Yeah.
weeks of work. And so I got inspired, and I started working harder on things. And then he started giving me things that he didn't want to work on that were weapons related. Like there was one contract where it was a bunch of rare gun parts that were going to be sent to the special forces in Germany, because special forces need to train on all these obsolete weapons, so that if they come across these old weapons in the field, they can know how to use them. So they train on all these historical weapons that aren't really being produced anymore. So they wanted to buy this massive amounts, a really wide variety of old weapons, like World War II era handguns, Lugers, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was a huge amount of work, because it was like 70 different items, and he didn't want to put in the legwork to do it. So he's like, "You know what? Why don't you work on this, and we'll split the money there." And so he was working on other things, and so that's kind of how I got into the gun side of the business. I'd never owned a gun. I wasn't a gun guy. I was just a musician. Never really cared so much about guns. But
were you still excited about it to work?
I was excited to make money.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to admit it.
Yeah.
I wanted to make money just like everyone else in business. It was quite a learning curve, because I didn't know that much about weapons, that I had to learn all these things.
Yeah, just like the naming in general is pretty tough, especially if it's that many different items.
Yeah, and what all these little, because it wasn't whole weapons either. They also wanted parts, so you had to get the receiver and the stock and all these things. So I haven't done this in 15 years, so I don't even remember the names anymore. But Yeah, so that's how. So I was working on that, a few other contracts, nothing huge, and then after about 8-9 months, we found the solicitation for the Afghan contract, and that's when I started working on that. And I remember I was driving home to have dinner with my girlfriend, who does not look like Anna de Armas. I'm sorry. You know, she's very beautiful, but she looks very different.
Are you still with the same
No,
woman?
no.
Okay.
We were married for 5 years.
Okay.
We have a daughter, and who's 15 now.
Wow.
And but we never really got along that well.
Okay.
And yeah, she's very beautiful, but she looks very different than Anna de Armas. She's actually half African.
Okay.
So
Oh,
she's
really?
dark.
So they really
yeah.
just took a whole.
Yeah,
Spanish.
Yeah, I mean, I have great hair in the movie. I mean, they didn't really care about how we looked.
Yeah.
They weren't particularly, Efram was not that overweight like Jonah Hill was in
really?
the film. No, I mean, Efram was overweight right before.
Don't get me wrong.
Well, he fluctuated a lot.
Yeah.
So right before he went to prison, he was pretty overweight
Okay.
because he was really partying it up, and because he knew he was gonna be gone for a while. So he spent a lot of money and a lot of restaurants, hookers, and blow. Yeah. So he spent a lot of money.
So
on
they were
that
spot
for a
on with
few
that
years.
part.
Oh man, they
Undersold
they
that.
undersold that.
Okay.
Yeah, they really his character is much nicer in the film than in real life.
Really?
Much nicer. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyone who knows him will tell you that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
So
you think that was just a lack of research, or trying to make it like
no,
a
they did it on
part of the
purpose.
movie? Oh, they did it
So
on purpose.
yeah, so Stephen Chin, the screenwriter of Wardogs, told me that they had to tone down his character in order to make him more believable.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
To make it more
way.
believable.
Yeah, and because they said that he was, in real life, he was just such an asshole. That they wanted to make him more likable to the audience so that you could relate to him. And yeah, because he told me, he's like, if we portray him how he was, people are going to be like wondering about you. Like, why are you hanging out with this guy?
Did you actually punch him in the face?
I never punched him in the face.
Okay.
I know. I wanted to. I definitely wanted to, but I knew that was not gonna go well.
Yeah.
Not that like I'm afraid of him physically, but he would sue me, and it would
Be a
just give him.
nightmare. Yeah.
It would give him a lot of leverage. So I wasn't gonna do
When
that.
when you first started working, before you started, be it whether or not how he is an asshole or whatever he is, but how he is a pretty magnetic figure, though, right? So did that kind of drive you to work with him, or was it more the money aspect, or did you kind of just believe that, okay, I believe in this guy, he's a magnetic, but did he draw you towards him kind of?
Well, he's a very charismatic guy. He's very funny. He can make you laugh. He's a total piece of shit, and he'll treat you like shit, and he treats people like shit around him. But on a superficial level, he's very magnetic. He's very charismatic. For me, it was more of an inspiration that I saw that he knew what he was doing and that he was very successful at such a young age, and I realized that he made more money in 1 year than I would, at my current rate, I would have made in 5 years. So, so I could learn a lot from him. I found him entertaining, but he was also very, very irritating as well.
You just had dealt with it because it was worth it for what you were getting.
Yeah. If it wasn't for the opportunity, I definitely would not have worked with him. I was not working with him to hang out with him. that was not. Even though he was very entertaining and all that, and exciting to be around, but he was.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Buddy. Yeah, but he was very irritating, and in the way that what I mean by that is he's always on everyone's case, like always stressed out, always yelling. So he's like, oh, we got to do this. Why aren't you doing this? I'm not paying you to sit around and fuck around and do nothing. He wasn't paying me like a salary, so he wouldn't say that to me, but to other people in the office. Once we hired other employees, he would be yelling at them constantly, and they were always stressed out and like avoiding him. He was just one of these nightmare bosses. Because he was always on a power trip. That was like his whole thing. He didn't even really care about the money so much from a way of what he could spend it on. Because the funny thing is that he was super, super, super cheap. Like the cheapest guy I've ever seen, and he had like so much money. This is funny. I once saw him argue on the phone with AT&T for 45 minutes because he had like a $7 overcharge on his bill. And I told him, I'm like, what are you doing? You could spend that time and make so much money if you just like do our normal business. Why are you fighting about the $7? And he's like, it's the principle of the matter. Nobody fucks me over. He's the only one who fucks people over. So he was just one of these people, and he spent like very little on the girl he was dating. He would always try to take her to cheap restaurants, you know, like he was just one of these guys. He was just super, super, super cheap. I think later on he changed. He started once he had tens of millions of dollars, he started going to nicer restaurants, but that was as far as it went. He
Only
didn't.
then.
Yeah, only then. Yeah, because we didn't get our own. We were working out of his apartment until we won the Afghan contract.
Oh wow! So how long was that?
Yeah, about until we won the Afghan contract, about a little over a year.
Oh wow!
Yeah. I started working on the Afghan contract about like 8-9 months in.
How long into the business did you guys come across that?
When I started working with him, about 8-9 months.
8-9 months.
And that's
in.
then
Wow.
we started working on that. Yeah, that's when we started working on it, but we didn't win it until like 4 months later.
And how did that come about? How did you guys find that opportunity?
Well, so we saw, the government posts all their requests for proposals, as they call it, the RFPs. They've got acronyms for everything. They posted it on their website. Back then it was called fbo.gov, Federal Business Opportunities. Now it redirects to a new site called sam.gov. I don't even know what it stands for. I didn't look it up. But
Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam, exactly. And so they post everything they want to buy. And and there's different categories of contracts. So if they want to buy fighter jets, it's a sole source contract because only certain companies make those fighter jets. But if it's a commodity thing, like weapons, small arms, ammunition, accessories, clothing, food, anything that's a commodity, they'll put it out for competitive bid, and in which case anyone who's registered with the government, which is not hard to do, you can do that, you can put a bid. And if it's under a certain amount, if it's under $100,000 or so, then you don't need any past performance. So they just go by the price. So if you have the best price, they'll give you the contract. You deliver by the date they require, according to the contract, and then 30 days after you deliver, they pay you. So you do need to finance these things. Yeah, you got to carry it. And so when Efram first started, he didn't have the money to finance the deals, and that's how he met Ralph. In the movie, Ralph is this Jew who owns a bunch of laundromats in Miami. In real life, Ralph was a Mormon who lived in Utah and owned a machine gun factory. So a little bit more in the industry. Yeah. And actually, Ralph is how we met Henry, Bradley Cooper's character. In the movie, they make it look like as if Henry found us. That's not how it happened. Ralph had been doing business with Henry, I think, since the 90s. Okay. So they go way back. And because Ralph was financing Efram's deals, Ralph introduced Efram to Henry, and that's how we met him. We did meet him in Vegas.
Was Henry actually on a watch list and everything?
So he was on a, I think it was a Amnesty International watch list. I don't think he was on a government watch list. It wasn't illegal for us to do business with him. Okay. Because we actually told the government that we were before we won the Afghan contract, they did these series of audits where they wanted to see how we were going to deliver on this contract. And one of the things they asked us was where you getting all the stuff from. Give us all your sources. Government can do that, right? So we had to list where each item was coming from, who the people we were dealing with, and Henry was one of those people, and we put him on the list, and they approved it. So it wasn't like he was either he was on a list and they just didn't check, which is very possible. But I don't think it was illegal for us to do business with him. He was on an Amnesty International list as being a person who was suspected of dealing with African warlords and people of that nature. So nothing that we knew for sure. There was no proof that was out there as far as I know. He definitely didn't tell us anything. Really? But yeah, I mean that's how we met Henry in Las Vegas. But back to what you were asking. So so Efram found the list on the contract, the request for proposal for the Afghan contract on the website, and I was driving home to have dinner with my girlfriend at the time, and he goes to me, he's like, hey, you got to get to the office right now, and I'm like, well, I'm busy, Efram, work day's over, and he's like, fuck that, get to the office right now, and I'm like, just tell me. He's like, fine. He's like, there's this huge request for proposal, and it's bigger than anything I've ever seen. And I'm like, well, what is it? He's like, it's perfect. It's the stuff that we've been dealing with. It's all Warsaw Pact ammo, so they're going to have to go through brokers. They can't go to the manufacturers because Warsaw Pact ammo is stuff from the old Soviet Union. So U.S. companies don't really manufacture this stuff. So they would have to buy it through intermediaries. And there's a huge amount of this stuff stored in bunkers and warehouses all over Eastern Europe. So we knew that it was going to be what they call a surplus deal. It wasn't going to be a new manufacturing deal, which with surplus, because the stuff's been there forever, there's a lot more negotiating capability because it's not costing them anything.
I see.
It's just like, how much do they think they can get and how much do you think you can negotiate them down? It's not like they have to spend X number of dollars on the materials and on labor, except like with a manufacturer, there's only so low they can go. But with surplus, you can go all the way down. It's all just profit for them. So because of that, we knew there was big profits potential. A lot of wiggle room. And so he's really excited. And he's like, we gotta talk about this now. And I'm like, let's talk about this tomorrow. It's not going anywhere. And I already told my girlfriend I'm gonna have dinner with her. And I'll always remember this. He's like, listen, do you want to go hang out with your girlfriend, or you want to make some fucking money? Your girlfriend will be sucking your dick after all the money you're going to be making off this contract. And I'm like, yeah, and she'll still do it if we do it tomorrow.
It'll still be there.
Yeah. And he's like, fine, I can't believe you're not really serious about this.
Oh my God.
Because he was just like a workaholic.
Yeah.
He worked. He told me that he'd love to brag about this, that he would love to take phone calls with the U.S. government while he was having sex with his girlfriend.
That was his thing, huh?
Yeah. He would get a call and he'd be like, oh, baby, keep on going. I gotta take this. And like, it was just like his thing.
You couldn't write this character.
You could not write this guy.
And his girlfriend hated it, obviously.
I can imagine.
But eventually she dumped him, and she had to get a restraining order against him because he showed up on her lawn at like 3 in the morning, screaming and banging on the door. And like, she lived with her parents, so her parents were like, who the fuck, what's going on? The arms dealer boyfriend is going insane at 3 in the morning. Call the fucking cops. So she had to get a restraining order against him, and it was pretty ugly. And like, just like he's obsessive with business, he was obsessive with his relationships too. So like, he wouldn't leave girls alone. He would like call them like 30 times in a row. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Wow. Like he would call, they wouldn't answer. He would call again. Like, they'd see like 27 missed calls. It's like he was like
a little messed up.
A little bit.
Yeah,
a little bit concerning. So we started working on the Afghan contract, and he told me, he's like, hey, listen, this is my bread and butter. I've got great connections for this. We usually split things 50-50, but for this, because this is my main business, it's not like you're doing fuel or stuff that I have no expertise in. We'll do 25-75, and I'm like, fine, I don't care. This is going to be such a huge contract. I'm totally happy with 25%.
Yeah.
And so I started, he gave me a list of all the people that he was already in contact with, that he'd been working with over the last year or two. And he's like, just don't contact these people, go find new sources. So I start going online, I start looking up lists of sources. There's lists that you could find of defense industry lists where they list all the manufacturers of various weapon systems. So I went through the entire thing. It was like hundreds of companies, contacted every single one of them, built a big spreadsheet with different columns, whether I contacted them, whether they got back to me, what the whole state of the thing was. A lot of them didn't use email. They would only use fax and phone, and they barely spoke English. So it was a real pain. And they only, or like through business hours in Eastern Europe, so I have to be up all night to talk to people. And oftentimes the one guy who spoke a tiny bit of English wasn't there, but he'll be there in a couple hours. Well, you know, only for a few minutes and a couple hours. You have to call right then. You know, so it was a huge pain in the butt to get these sources. And but a few months of work, and I really filled out all the stuff that we were missing that he couldn't get good pricing on. And we had a pretty competitive, we obviously didn't know because we didn't know what prices everyone else was getting. And we actually thought it was a low chance of us winning this contract because it was a huge contract, and we knew that all the other big boys in the industry were bidding on it. General Dynamics told us. We bumped into them at a trade show. The head of General Dynamics is a multi-billion-dollar public company, but they have a small division for them. It's like 100 people. Working on these types of contracts. And we bumped into the head guy of that division in a trade show, and he told us that they are working really hard on that contract, and they fully intend to win it. And we're like, okay, well, they've got 100 people working on this, so
were you a little intimidated by that, or no?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we thought it was a low chance. We did think that, but we thought it was such a huge opportunity that we couldn't not bid on it. Yeah. We weren't gonna just let it go. We're like, well, you never know. And so after a few months of sourcing, we put in our bid, and of course everything was at the last second because Efram, that's how he rolls. You know, he couldn't do things with a few hours of leeway. Everything had to be like up to the last minute because he couldn't decide whether it was he should put 9% or 8% profit margin because he figured that everyone else was doing 10. But what if someone else, you know, was thinking like he was thinking, was going to do 9, and they had the exact same prices as we had because they talked to all the sources that we had. So maybe he should do 8 to undercut that guy, you know. And eventually he's like, you know what, we'll do 9. But by then it was like 20 minutes until the post office was about to close. So we hop in his car, and he's like going like 60 miles an hour down
the school bus lane.
Yeah, and we got to the post office literally 2 minutes before closing. And usually you submit this electronically, but for some reason they wanted everything in paper and CDs for the Excel sheets. So I don't know why. Maybe because it was such a big contract. Yeah. But we got it in, and then we didn't hear from them for like a month and a half. And then they contacted us, and so we figured, we probably lost because they would have told us something. And then we get a call from them, and they're like, we have to do these, I think it was 3 or 5, I think it was, I don't remember, audits. And there was a financial audit where they wanted to see how much money we had and whether we could float the deal. Yeah. There was a logistics audit. We wanted to see how we were going to deliver, who we were getting it from. And there was an accounting audit to make sure that all our books were in order and that we could account for everything and do it like the back-end logistics, so to speak. And so we had the finances, we had Ralph's money, we had Efram's money, we got a what they call a factoring agreement from the bank. Excuse me. A factoring agreement means that it's a financing deal where because the government only pays you 30 days after you deliver. And so what you do is you take the invoice, the certificate of conformance, they call it, that the government signs off on to acknowledge that they got the goods and they approved the delivery. And you go to the bank and you say, hey, the government's going to pay me in 30 days, and the government gives you the money now and then collects the money from the government for a small financing fee. So that way you get the money immediately. You don't have to wait 30 days. And because you get the money immediately, you could roll it back into the next plane load and keep on delivering on a regular basis. Gotcha. So you don't have this like 30-day gap. So because we got that, we were able to use a much smaller amount of money to finance the whole thing because we only did it in quantities of 1 plane load at a time rather than $300 million. You know? So with the combination of Ralph's money and Efram's money, I think we had something like, if I recall correctly, somewhere around $6-7 million in cash, plus the financing agreement from Wells Fargo, and so that satisfied their financial audit. We gave them all our sources, including Henry. That satisfied their accounting, their logistics audit, But the problem was the accounting system was non-existent. Efram never did any accounting.
So you did
right?
have to forge all those documents.
Yes, we had to pretty much go back to all the contracts we'd ever done and create an accounting system as if that had been done the whole time, with the dates backdated and all that. Yeah. We hired a accountant to pretty much create an entire accounting history from scratch.
Welcome to AEY.
Yeah.
How did the accountant feel about that?
The accountant was okay with it. It wasn't like I don't think it was necessarily illegal.
Just only if you're using it to deceive would be the thing that would make it. Probably.
I mean, it was accurate. Right, so the accounting it wasn't like we were lying on the numbers. The number, it was all accurate. It all reflected what actually occurred business wise.
Just should have been done before.
It should have been done the whole time, and we definitely made it look like it was done the whole time because we didn't want them to doubt our competence and our responsibility.
Is that common with deals, like smaller deals, or was that just for that? When
that
you guys
was
got
just
audited
they'd
for
never done this before. This was Efram had, I think, the biggest contract he'd ever won was, I think, an $18 million contract before this, which is not too bad.
Yeah.
But
good,
and that's how he made his millions. But they didn't even do it for that.
Wow.
So
Such a big deal then.
Yeah, it was a whole other level.
Did it surprise you guys at first when that happened? Like, oh God, they're gonna audit everything.
Yeah, we thought we were fucked. We're like, oh shit, how are we gonna pass these audits? There's no way we're going to be able to do this. And so we scrambled for a few months in order to make that happen.
That's wild to me that they're able to like hang out for those months, like waiting for the deal to close.
Yeah. Well, so the government works on its own time, and Afghanistan has a fighting season. So because Afghanistan is very mountainous and the winters are really, really cold and snowy, you can't really get around Afghanistan in the winter. So they only fight in the spring and the summer.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the audit time, we were just getting into winter at the time.
Okay.
So they knew they had at least until the spring to get the stuff delivered before it would get really serious.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So then when you got through the audits and everything like that and everything was done, when did you find out officially? Did it happen right after all the audits were done? Were you
no,
like the day later,
so we completed all the audits and then we didn't hear back from them for like another month or two. Okay. And so we were like, so we thought, they're probably auditing a few, like the top 3 or 5 contenders or something, and then they'll decide once the audits are done. They probably were doing that. So we thought, we didn't hear back from them. So I guess we didn't pass the audits or they picked someone else. And then in January, Efram calls me up and he's like, hey, I've got good news and bad news. And I'm like, well, what's the bad news? And he's like, the first task order is only $600K. And I'm like, what? We won the fucking contract? He's like, yeah, fuck yeah, we won. He's like, where are you? I'm picking you up. We're going to a restaurant. We're gonna have champagne and cocaine.
The perfect celebration.
That's how you celebrate.
Yeah. So what he meant by the task order is, so the way the government works with these large contracts is they don't give you an order for $300 million, right? They say this is what we plan to order over X period. It was 2 years, right? Over a 2-year period.
Two years. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh, I mean, it was massive. We were very busy delivering it.
Was it like the only thing that you guys were working on was just that deal, and you kind of put everything else?
So no, it was the only thing I was working on.
Okay.
But Efram just couldn't stop bidding on new contracts. Even I told him, listen, Efram, this is like 25 times bigger than anything
2 years of work.
You've done. So it's like, why are you bidding on all these? He was bidding on like $2 million deals, $3 million. Like we have a $300 million deal. Why are you wasting
more? Like, I need cocaine and champagne money.
Yeah, he's like he was like, listen, we're on a roll. Why stop now? That was like his whole thing. And I'm like, well, we should concentrate on actually delivering this thing, because if we don't deliver, we're kind of fucked and we're not going to make all that money. And he's like, you got this, bro. You got this. You can handle this.
He's like, just you.
In the beginning, it was, yeah. So he's like, so I told him, like, Efram, you want me to handle this whole thing myself? He's like, yeah, you can do this. He's like,
that's a lot of trust. That's cool though.
Yeah, he's like, I'm gonna go and get new deals. And then like a few weeks later, he's like, listen, I've been thinking about it. Maybe I should be involved too. He's like, but because I'm gonna be involved, we have to renegotiate.
Again.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So like he used that.
Yeah.
So he used that as a way to renegotiate, my end of the deal, and he kept on renegotiating until eventually I was like, fuck you, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, he never stopped renegotiating. Like
Wow.
so the way it works is once they give us the contract, they give you a task order, which is a order against the contract. So they are actually not legally required to order the entire amount. They're legally required only to order the first task order. So we were debating while we were bidding, you know, are they going to actually order this entire? Because this is a huge amount. I've never seen a contract this big for these kind of items. Are they actually serious about this, or are they just fucking around or whatever? Because it made a big difference to the price that we were bidding it at, because a huge component of the price was the air freight to fly the stuff into Afghanistan, and you only get the cheap prices on the air freight if you have massive quantity.
I see.
So if they order a small amount, we would lose money.
Oh.
So it was a big debate whether or not they were serious about ordering the whole thing.
It was kind of like your own loss leader.
Yeah,
on that
exactly,
one. Yeah.
exactly. You could call it that.
Yeah.
So that's what he's like. The bad news is the first task order is $600K. So it's like if that's all they're
You're like,
ordering,
shit.
we're like kind of fucked.
Yeah.
You know, there is no way that we can't deliver that, and we will get canceled for cause and the whole thing. So we were nervous. We were very nervous. You know, we were like waiting for a follow-up order, which came a few weeks later for $20 million. So it wasn't so bad.
Damn.
So
You're like, all right, we're good.
yeah. It was a big sigh of relief after that. So that's why he said that. And he picked me up and you know, we went to some Italian restaurant, and he was like blowing Coke like in his napkin, because he had this like little plastic bullet filled with like Coke, and and he insisted like I was never really into Coke.
Yeah.
I mean, I would do it when he would insist, but I'm more of a weed guy.
Yeah.
You know, more chill, right? You know.
Seems pretty pushy. He probably gets
He
you to do
seems
it.
like, come on, let's go.
Yeah, he's like, come on, bro, come on. He's
be a
like,
pussy.
yeah. He would say that a lot. yeah, he would say that a lot.
Just slight harassment in the workplace.
Oh,
All right, sure.
it wasn't slight. Yeah. He was very insistent. Yeah, he was a very intense guy. So, and he was like, listen, he's like, this is just the beginning. Those guys, those fat cats in the boardrooms aren't gonna know what hit them. Their stock prices are gonna tank after this, and he's like, me and you, buddy, we're gonna be flying private jets. You just watch AEY. Everyone's gonna know AEY. You know, so he was like,
He wasn't wrong.
Yeah, were you pretty fired up? Were you like,
He wasn't wrong.
let's do it.
right. Not the way he thought it would be.
But everyone knows it.
Yeah, that's
now.
true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, not the private jets, not so much. Yeah. Maybe he is now. I don't know, but
In Mexico.
Yeah, in Mexico, right? So that's when we won the contract in January. Started working on it. We had a whole bunch of issues getting overflight permits, because you need to get permission to fly military goods over the countries that you're flying over, and some of them were allied with Russia, who were not happy because they were expecting to get this contract. It's a whole other story, but. And they also wanted to mess with the U.S. Geopolitically, and so they were leaning on the Central Asian countries, the stands they call them, the Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, to not give us overflight permits. And eventually we managed to get it all the overflight permits by getting the holdout Uzbekistan. We hired their airline, their national airline, to fly our goods, and then they gave us the overflight permit.
so
So you
cool.
really
That's
need to
cool.
know like
this is
geopolitically
like-
what's
that's-
going on. Like,
Yeah,
was it like that
yeah.
with all deals, or was it just especially with that one?
Especially with this one, just because of the logistics.
Yeah.
Because Afghanistan is a landlocked country. So you have to fly things, and it's surrounded by unstable countries. So you can't use ground transportation. Like if going through Pakistan, your goods will never arrive. So there's a lot of warlords in the area who would love to get their hands
bunch
on a
of ammo.
train full of ammo, and So we had to fly everything in, and because we had to fly everything in, we had to fly over these Central Asian countries, and we had to deal with that.
Just the logistical part of that was probably a
So
fucking
intricate, yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah,
you have to, like,
it was.
You have to throw a lot of money around, like to these different politicians and stuff.
So that's actually illegal. You're not allowed to do that. And I'm sure people do it, but if you get caught doing that, you could go to prison in the United States. It goes against U.S. law to bribe foreign
well.
people,
Okay.
as well, not just U.S.
Gotcha.
Officials. It's illegal to bribe foreign government officials as well. So the way we did it was we went through the State Department, and we would talk to the military attaché in the State Department, who's the member of the State Department who's in charge of interfacing with the military of the host country, and they deal with all the military matters. And we would contact them and say, hey, we're a government contractor. We have this contract with the U.S. Army. We'd send them all our paperwork to show that we were real. And, we need these overflight permits. And then they would go and talk to the Ministry of Defense of Kyrgyzstan or Uzbekistan or whoever we were talking to, and try to arrange the overflight permits that we needed. And usually they would get it done pretty well because the United States
they'll move quick.
Yeah. The United States has a lot of sway, right, in most places. But sometimes they would just give them the runaround and, like not take their phone calls and be like, oh, this is really weird. I don't know why they're not answering my call for this particular contract. And there was certain things that was like weird stuff was going on, and the military attaché was telling us was weird.
Oh, wow.
And that we realized later it was the Russians leaning on them to like slow us down.
That's insane.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it wasn't cool at the time.
No, it was probably stressful.
It was super stressful. The most stressful story with that kind of situation was we had a 747 aircraft, a cargo aircraft, 747, which is I think something like 100 tons of ammo, 100 or 110. And we had we flew it. It had to stop in Kyrgyzstan to refuel, and Kyrgyzstan is right next to Afghanistan. And the U.S. has a U.S. military Air Force base in Kyrgyzstan. And when it landed, the Kyrgyz authorities said, hey, you guys don't have the proper paperwork, so you can't take off until you give us all the licensing. And we're like, well, we do have the proper paperwork because the aircraft wouldn't have taken off if we didn't. The pilots won't leave unless they have all their ducks are in a row, right? They don't want to, specifically for this reason, they don't want to get stuck somewhere. So we're like, we do have the proper paperwork, and they're like, no, you don't. And so we call up the military attaché, and we're like, what's going on here? And he's like, I don't know. I looked at your paperwork. It's all fine. And so it all checks out. I'm going to talk to my guys. And like we call him back the next day. He's like, they're not taking my phone calls. Really weird. They usually are very, very responsive. And
the
like
crew
a
is
week
just
goes
sitting
by,
over there
and
waiting.
the plane is just lying on the tarmac. And they told us that they're going to fine us like $300,000 a day.
A day?
A day for our aircraft sitting there. And we're like, we have the paperwork, let our aircraft take off.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you don't have it, and you have to pay us $300,000 a day. And we're like, oh fuck, we're fucked. And so we're scrambling. Eventually, and the military attaché in Kyrgyzstan was like, this is something real weird is going on here. I'm gonna talk to the guys in the Pentagon, and they got up the chain of command. Eventually, after I think a few weeks, it was there for a few weeks. The Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, had to fly over there and like find out what the hell was going on. And after he flew over there, our aircraft was released.
I guess that's the good thing about it being such a big deal.
Yeah.
You'll
get a lot
it's
of
their priority to get that over there.
Pay those fees as
Did you
well?
pay $300,000 a day?
We didn't pay any fees.
Okay.
Zero fees. Yeah.
The worst part about that is that you're doing all this over the phone.
Yeah.
Like that's like.
Yeah,
nothing's
we
in
were
person.
wondering whether we had to fly over there, and we were going to, but the military attaché was like, no, don't worry about it. We've got the Secretary of Defense coming. You guys aren't going to help. And then a few weeks after our aircraft was released, it came out in the papers that the United States reached a new rental agreement with Kyrgyzstan for the air base. That the Kyrgyz had doubled the rent from 30 to 60 million a year.
Whoa.
So that was, I think, what was going on. They were
broker.
holding our plane hostage in order to increase the real mafia move there.
Yeah.
Increase the rent. So they squeezed an extra $30 million out of the U.S. government.
Wow.
By holding our plane hostage.
That's insane. That was like their play on that.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that was the only thing, because I know that Putin was also leaning on the Kyrgyz to block our aircraft, the Russians. just to mess with the United States, and also because the main Russian company who deals with arms exports was expecting to get this contract, so they wanted us to fail so that the U.S. would have to run back to them and buy from them. But the U.S. decided not to buy from the Russians because the Russians had sold nuclear technology to Iran. And got on arms embargo blacklist, so they couldn't buy from the Russians anymore, and that's why they put it out to open bid, and we ended up winning that.
Wow.
Yeah,
it's nuts how much like
yeah.
You always hear about like people like countries leaning on other countries, like,
right?
But you don't really see it. But like that case, you definitely saw it. It's just like it's very interesting how that works. Like, wow, this actually happens. People like legitimate other companies will lean on other companies to mess with the United States.
Yeah. I mean, the United States leans on plenty of people too.
I'm sure. 100%. It's just like it's just a game.
Everyone leans on everyone. That's politics.
Were you actually flying out all the time to the warehouses?
Yeah, were you in like Albania? Was it like?
So I didn't go to Albania. I've been to many other places. So with the Albania, we sent a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, Alex. He doesn't appear in the movie, which he was very happy about. He's one of these guys who doesn't like the limelight. Yeah. But in the movie, they combine our characters because they didn't want to have like a third character.
Gotcha.
Did anyone get held at gunpoint?
No,
kidnapped?
That never happened. No, sorry. Yeah. Oh, you weren't almost killed. Damn it.
Did you you know, I don't know your views on that. Did you ever find like the stuff that you were doing, like, did you ever have conflicting views in your head of like, you know, we're supplying guns to these countries, you know, like it's like warlordish or like, you know, not warlordish, but you know, did you ever have like conflicting views in your head of how
they might be used later on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a big concern because there's all these stories of the Afghan National Army selling the stuff that they were getting from the United States to the Taliban, who they were fighting. So because corruption was a massive problem there. So it was a huge concern, and I knew that was possible. And now that the Taliban took over, they have all the stuff that's left. So including all the stuff that the U.S. military left there. I was aware that the stuff I was supplying could fall into the wrong hands, and that would not be good, right? But it would also not be good for the people fighting the Taliban not to have any bullets to fight with them.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't, and everyone uses this as an excuse, but I knew that if we were delivering, the U.S. government would get someone else to deliver, and it would cost the taxpayers more money than if we were delivering. So I rationalized it to myself that way.
It's a good point. It's a valid point.
It would happen anyway, and we're saving the taxpayer money by doing it, by being the best price. Now, I'm sure all the angry comments on YouTube are going to call me a mass murderer and all other sorts of nasty things, but that's the business.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone's selling it. Yeah.
Did you actually go out to Illinois to win that contract when you were talking to them about everything, or was
Efram went. Yep. I didn't go. He took Ralph with him instead because he was so young. Ralph is an older guy. Oh, okay. So we felt like we needed someone more mature and responsible looking to counterbalance Efram. So
were you actually like 50 million under the next bid?
We were 53 million under. Wow. Yeah, that is true. We didn't find it out at that meeting though.
Okay.
I found that out over the phone. I was talking to my contact in the government, and he was telling me, he's like, "Oh, you guys are really competitive there. You were doing really. I got to say, we were all very impressed with the prices you came in." And I was like, "Oh, really? How competitive were we?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not really allowed to tell you this, but between you and me, you were 53 million under." And I was like, "Oh my God." And I told Efram, and he was super pissed. Yeah, he's like, fuck. Yeah, he was really like that.
So did, when you, first off, how did you find out you had to repack the ammo? Was that always a plan, or did that actually increase your profit on that deal? Right,
so with the Albanian ammo, so the ammo that we sourced in Albania, that was the ammo for the AK-47. It was by far the largest logistical challenge. So it's the cheapest stuff, but it was also the highest quantity. So we knew that it was going to be a logistics challenge to do that. And at the time, this was when we won the contract, it was in early 2007, there was a huge spike in oil prices. And we were flying everything into Afghanistan. So our air freight costs were directly related to the oil price. And so our air freight skyrocketed, and we realized we couldn't deliver this stuff at the price that we bid to the government. Now, most responsible companies would do what they call a hedge, right? They'll do a fuel hedge. So they'll buy fuel futures to hedge against spikes in oil prices, so that if the oil price goes up, you make money on this hedge, and everything balances out. But Efram didn't like to do that, so he was more of a risk tolerant type of guy, and didn't want to spend the money on that insurance, so to speak. So we had no hedge. And so when the oil price spiked, we were like, there's no way we could deliver this stuff and make any, we're going to lose money on this.
How much would like one flight cost?
So one flight was about in a little over $100,000 range for a flight. Now we had bid it at 70. So it was a massive difference. So we knew that we wouldn't be able to deliver at this increased price, and because now for the stuff like grenades and rockets, there's very high value items. The value of the cargo was millions of dollars, so the $40,000 increase in fuel price didn't make a big deal. But for the ammo, for the AK ammo, it was only a few $100,000 in value, so that ate into our margin, got rid of our margin. So I had the idea. I'm like, Efram, I told him, like, this stuff is packaged in these really heavy wooden crates. They're just asking for the ammo. So what if we repackage it into lighter boxes? We could save a bunch of money on the aircraft. And he was like, oh, that's a great idea. We got to go. How much do those crates weigh? And we have no idea. And we're like, well, should we ask the Albanians to weigh it? No, we can't trust them. We need to send someone over there and do it ourselves. And I was dealing with the government all day and with many other sources. It wasn't just Albania. I was dealing with Hungary and Ukraine and all these other countries that we're dealing with, Kazakhstan, and so I had my plate full, and so Efram was like, well, we need someone to go there and weigh the boxes and take care of this repackaging operation. And my friend Alex at the time had just done a stint has a French citizenship, so he had just done a stint in the French military, had some military experience. He's a very smart guy, very street smart as well. And so we're like, oh, he's a good guy. So we offered him the job to go over there and do the inspection and do the repackaging job. And we had no idea it was Chinese at this point. We were just doing this purely to save money on air freight. And so he goes over there and he gets, shown the stuff, and he calls me up and he's like, this is Chinese, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, there's Chinese markings all over the boxings. We're like, oh, fuck, because, in our contract it said no Chinese ammo can be delivered because there was an arms embargo against China put in 1989, the Tiananmen Square massacre of a pro-democracy movement in China. Caused the U.S. to put them under a blacklist. So they put in our contract, you can't deliver any Chinese ammo, period. Either directly or indirectly, they said. Right? Now, the stuff in Albania had been given to Albania as a gift from China in the 70s, when they became allies after Albania pulled out of the Soviet Union. And so the 70s was before 1989, right? So this stuff was technically not violating the embargo.
Okay.
But if you can buy a Chinese AK-47 today, if it was brought into the United States before 1989, right? Because you bought it legally then, you could resell it legally because it was bought legally originally. So we were thinking, well, the stuff doesn't violate the embargo, but our contract with the U.S. Army says no Chinese, period. It doesn't say no Chinese that doesn't violate the embargo. So we're thinking, well, what should we do? And we had pretty much two options. And the option was to go tell the Army about it and say, hey, guys, this stuff is Chinese ammo. It's from the 70s. It doesn't violate the embargo, but our contract says this. Can you give us a waiver? A written waiver, and then we can deliver. And they could have said, yeah, that makes sense. We kind of messed up writing the contract. We meant to reference the embargo, but we didn't. Or they could have said, well, you know, all your competitors bid on this with the requirement that that you could only deliver non-Chinese stuff. So it's not fair that you get to deliver this stuff when they couldn't bid on that stuff. And so we're going to take this $300 million contract away from you and put it out for bid again. And we're like, oh, we really don't want to lose that $300 million contract. So Efram was like, you know what? Fuck it. We're going ahead with the repacking, and this time we have to make sure that not a single Chinese piece of paper goes inside because it came with the way it was packaged was it was in these wooden crates, these heavy wooden crates, and inside that what they call sardine cans, these metal tins, which are vacuum packed. And that's why ammo could last pretty much forever if it's kept in proper storage, because it's all vacuum sealed. And inside the sardine cans were these little pieces of paper that, like, the factory had put in, that was all written in Chinese.
Oh, okay.
So, so originally we were just going to ship it in the tin cans because the vast majority of the weight was the wooden crates. But then we realized the Chinese papers are inside the thing, so we had to repackage it, take it out of the tins, get rid of the paper, put it in like a sealed plastic bag so to protect it from corrosion and the elements, and then put it in like strong corrugated cardboard boxes to save on the weight. And so Alex found a box manufacturer in Albania, a cardboard box manufacturer, and asked him if he had, you know, because he had a factory, so he's like, can you supply some workers to do this repackaging operation? And he was like, yeah. So we made a deal with him. I think it was something like $100,000 to do the entire repackaging. It was $100,000 or $200,000.
So that was accurate in the movie?
Yeah,
Like $150,000.
yeah.
Kind of laughed.
Yeah. And we saved about $3 to $4 million in air freight.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an incredible deal right there.
Yeah. So
you're lucky you thought about repacking.
Yeah.
Just shipped a bunch of Chinese ammo over there.
Right.
That's crazy.
The funny thing is that I honestly believe that we could have shipped it in its original packaging, and I think they would have just accepted it because they found out later that it was Chinese and they kept on taking delivery.
Oh, really? How did they find out? Because I thought that's what like got you guys kind of caught.
Right. So what happened was Efram never stopped negotiating, right? And he wanted to get a better deal on the ammo. And so he kept on asking. He kept on asking Henry, who we were doing this deal through Henry, to give us a better deal. And Henry was like, "Look, I can't give you a better deal. This is you're not going to get a better deal anywhere else. This is the best deal in all of Europe." And Efram is like, "Yeah, but the air freight is killing me. You got to give me a better deal. I'm not making any money, you know." And so Efram had the idea to talk to the box guy and ask him, because the box guy had told Alex that he had a friend in the Albanian Ministry of Defense. And so Efram is like, yeah, ask him to ask that guy what the Ministry of Defense is getting paid for the ammo, right? So, because then he would know what Henry's profit margin. And so he found out from this guy that the Ministry of Defense was paying 2 cents a round for the ammo, but we were paying 4 cents a round to Henry. So Efram got super mad. He's like, man, he's doubling his, he's making half of that, he's screwing us. And now, of course, we assumed, we didn't know this because obviously Henry wouldn't tell us, but we assumed that Henry was giving kickbacks to various people in order to get this deal. So I don't think he was getting that entire margin. How much of that was kickbacks, how much he was keeping himself, I don't know. But in Efram's mind, Henry was getting the whole thing, and he was screwing us out of all this money. And so Efram thought he's like, well, let's cut Henry out of the deal. Let's just go do a deal directly with the Ministry of Defense. And so Efram flies over there. Before he flies over there, he's like, he goes to me. He's like, listen, I need you to take all those quotes that you got from your other suppliers and change the numbers on them, so it looks like we can get a better deal from them. If
this guy's a nutcase. So I could show them those quotes and say, hey, if you don't give us a better deal, I can go with these other guys, who are going to give me a better price. So I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do that. I
change numbers on a PDF document. It's not difficult. And so I print it out, give it to him. He flies to Albania. Alex told me this later, but he's like, he meets with the head of the export company in Albania. His name was Pinari, Yili Pinari. And he goes to Pinari. He's like, listen, I've got, you got to get me a better price because I've got the. And Yili takes one look at the paper. He's like, that's all fake. He's like, no way. That's crazy. He's like, I don't want to see your fake documents.
No way.
Yeah.
Called him out right there.
Yeah, right there. He didn't even take a second look at it. And so Yili Pinari, he arranges a meeting with the real boss, who's this guy named Diliorgi, who's was known, we found out later, was a well-known mafia guy in Albania, organized crime guy. And Efram, the way Alex told me the story, because Alex was there with him in the meeting, that as soon that they went to this this construction site, that it looked like it was just this like random construction site, and he goes inside, it's like all dusty and everything, and then they like open the door and suddenly it's in this like really sleek looking like office that looks straight out of Wall Street. Damn. And there's this guy Diliorgi is there, along with the a guy who we found out later, we didn't know this at the time, who was the son of the prime minister of Albania.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. This made it into the book, the Wardogs book that Guy Lawson wrote. The guy who wrote the Rolling Stone article, he expanded that into a book. Guy Lawson and Simon & Schuster, the publisher of the company, and me and Efram and Alex all got sued by the prime minister's son for libel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because this scene makes it into the book, and he claims he was never there. Alex recognized him, so he was able to find him in a picture. So he was there, but he sued us. And Simon and Schuster ended up I think they spent all the money they made on the book just defending this lawsuit, even though it was like a completely frivolous lawsuit. The lawsuit got tossed out of court. So,
oh God, right?
Yeah,
spent all the money on it.
Yeah. But I think Simon and Schuster lost money on this on that book.
Wow,
just because of the lawsuit. Yeah,
that's
because
insane.
that's how it goes. Even if you're sued frivolously, it costs you a lot of money, unfortunately. But so anyway, he gets into this meeting, and Alex told me that as Efram is like a big talker, like he's always, talking loudly, making jokes, talking shit, loves big shit talker. And as soon as he walked into the office, he got really quiet. He knew that this was not a place that he could talk shit. Like he took one look at this mafia guy, and he's like, "Oh, this guy's the real deal. He's gonna shoot me if I fucking say something to him." And so Diliorgi tells me, he's like, look, I know that you guys are repackaging the ammo, and you're paying this guy, Kosta Trebishka, this box manufacturer, for the repackaging deal. So I know you want a better price. We can't give you a better price. But if you give us the packaging deal, we can give you a little discount because we'll make money on the packaging deal. And Efram's like, deal. Screw that guy, you're in. And so took the contract away from Kosta, gave it to the Albanian mobsters, and Kosta got really mad because he called me up and he's like, hey, listen, I have $20,000 worth of boxes that I have nothing to do with now because I manufactured them for you guys. Or you guys can at least buy that from me. And I told Efram, like, hey, why don't we buy the boxes from Kosta? And he's like, yeah. I'll tell Diliorgi to buy it from him. And Diliorgi never bought it. He didn't want to deal with him. So Kosta got stuck with 20 grand worth of boxes, got really pissed off. And he went to the New York Times and told them what was happening. And he told the Justice Department what was happening. And his big mistake was he told the Albanian media what was happening. And he claimed that there were politicians getting kickbacks in this deal. And a few weeks or a month later, he ended up dead.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's insane.
Yeah. He had a very strange car accident. He was driving on a flat road and by himself, and they found him thrown 30 feet from his vehicle.
What?
Yeah, dead.
Wow.
On the side of the road.
People to fuck with.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So all of that basically, that's kind of what uncovered what was going on because of a $20,000
exactly.
Because of 20
out of
grand.
$300 million.
Yeah. So the New York Times started investigating, and in August, this was around 2 months after I left the company, because Efram eventually told me he didn't feel like I deserved to be paid, so I told him to go fuck himself, and I left the company in early July of 2007. Then in late August, I got a phone call from one of the secretaries at the office, and she's like, "Oh, the feds just raided the office. They took everyone's computer, and they're packing up all the filing cabinets. And, I just wanted you to know." And I'm like, "Oh, well, we're screwed."
Yeah.
And so I called up Alex, who was still in Albania, and I'm like, "Hey, listen, the feds just raided AEY's office," and he calls up Efram, and Danny, this guy named Danny, answers the phone, who had taken over my job after I'd left. And Danny answers the phone, and Alex is like, "Hey, I need some documents for the aircraft that are coming in for the delivery today. Can you get me these documents?" And because he knew that I told him like that they had taken all the documents from the office, so he wanted to see what they would say. And Alex told me that he heard Danny cover the phone and tell Efram, "Hey, Alex wants to know what's, you need some document. What should I tell him?" And he hears Efram whisper to Danny, "Oh, don't tell him anything. Don't tell him anything. Just tell him that there was a bomb threat." Yeah. Tell him there was a bomb threat? Yeah. Tell him there's a bomb threat, and that's why, and we had to leave the office, and that's why you can't get him the documents right now. But everything is cool. There's just a bomb threat. And so Danny he's like, I can't get it to you because there's a bomb threat. I'll get it to you as soon as I can.
It's an amazing excuse.
And so Alex is like, why is he lying to me? Is he planning on having me take the fall on this thing? Because he's the one arranging the whole repackaging situation, so they could claim, "Oh, we had no idea he was doing this." So Alex is like, "I'm not taking the fall for this." He was just getting paid a flat salary. He wasn't even like making any money on this, like serious money. And so Alex was like, "Well, if they're lying to me, then they could do anything." And so he was on the next plane back to the United States. And both Alex and I hired attorneys, and our attorneys said, "Well, first thing you do is go in your emails and see what kind of evidence they have." And we realized they had a lot. because we were really dumb. We were specific about like, "Oh, you got to repackage the ammo. It's got to make sure there's no Chinese markings in there." It's like, it's all an email. And we realized that there was no denying anything. And we were working all hours of the day and night, and missing each other in phone calls, and so email was just easier. And so that's how that whole thing got in. That's why we said things we shouldn't have said on email.
But you said that the military had known about
right. So I'm getting to that.
Okay.
So what happened was the Justice Department tells the U.S. Army after the raid, "Hey guys, this stuff is Chinese, and this might be illegal. You should stop taking delivery on this stuff." And the Army says, "Well, we really need it. It's mission critical materials.
Mission critical.
And so therefore, if you want us to stop taking delivery, we're going to need a letter from the Attorney General of the United States, head of the Justice Department."
Wow.
And that letter never came.
Wow.
I don't know why, but maybe he refused to do it. Maybe they didn't want to bother him with it. I don't know. But that letter never came, so they kept on taking delivery for the next 6 months.
Wow.
Until February of 2008. No, it was March of 2008 when the New York Times finally got around to publishing their article. And that they did the investigation. It was a front page article, had Efram's and my mugshots on the front page. We didn't look too great. And it was a very unflattering article. And caused a political backlash in Washington. They wanted us to testify in front of Congress, but our lawyers said, "Oh, well, we're going to plead the fifth," so they decided not to have us testify. But there's videos on YouTube from C-SPAN where some like senator has like my mugshot in front of Congress and saying, "This is the guy who's doing this." And it was bizarre. It was a really very strange situation. My phone started ringing off the hook. All these reporters wanted to talk to me, and my lawyer said, "Don't talk to anybody." And that was actually when when Guy Lawson from Rolling Stone, he was one of the journalists that contacted me, and I told him, look, you know, I'm a musician. My dream is to be written about in Rolling Stone. But my lawyer says I can't talk to you. So he's like, let me talk to your lawyer. And because Guy actually had been a lawyer before he became a journalist. So he talked to my lawyer, and he told my lawyer, look, I'm going to guarantee that I won't publish anything until all the legal jeopardy has been passed. And my lawyer said, well, you know, if you have that agreement, then you could interview him. And so he interviewed me, and he interviewed Efram also, I think once or twice, until Efram decided he wanted to write his own thing. And,
he wrote his own article?
He wrote his own book.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a funny book. It's not true at all. There's very, very little truth in it. And the funny thing is that so he wrote a book called Once a Gunrunner, and the name of the book comes from a funny story which I'll get to. But the guy who ghost wrote his book is a guy named Matt Cox, who he was in prison with.
Okay.
Yeah, Matt Cox has been on Concrete multiple times.
No way.
Yeah, that's how I got connected to Concrete.
Oh,
yeah, because
okay.
Matt Cox is a regular guest on Concrete, and he, you know, wrote Efram Diveroli's book. He also ended up getting screwed out of all the money that Efram promised him, as everyone does.
Scam.
Yeah.
Funny how that
the
works,
scammer
yeah.
got scammed, Matt told Danny this story, who told me, he mentioned in the podcast that while they were talking in prison, Matt told Efram, you know, you can't just keep on burning every bridge. And Efram goes, there's a lot of bridges, bro.
Oh my God.
A lot of bridges out there to burn. And he burned that bridge too. But so that's how Efram ended up writing his book. And Matt will be the first guy to say that is not the truth. That the book he wrote is not a reflection of the truth. And the Guy Lawson Wardogs book is the closest story there is to the truth. So the guy who wrote Efram's book will tell you it's not true.
David Packouz is money-hungry guy.
He says really nasty things about me in that book.
Oh,
he says really. Yeah, he really does. It's really nasty. He says very nice things about himself, surprisingly. And my favorite line in his book is the beginning of the book. He writes the intro or the prelude or whatever it is as in the third person. And he describes how he looks, and he's like, Efram Diveroli got up out of bed with a beautiful set of hair and a square jaw. He was handsome by anyone's measure. He wrote that in his own book. He described.
I was thinking the same thing. It's like Art of the Deal type of.
It's funny that back in 2006, 2007. All of our friends would always say that he was very similar to Trump. This is before Trump was even on the political scene, because he even had the same like kind of mannerisms as Trump in some way. Like when someone would come to Efram and try to negotiate with him, and like he was like sitting at his desk, Efram would do that thing that Trump always does in The Apprentice.
That's amazing.
Like with the steeple and the purse lip.
Yeah.
He had the exact same expression, like when he's like thinking, I'm gonna screw you, that was like what he's thinking, so that he had the exact same expression.
That's insane.
Were you reading his book just angry, like just every page?
Efram's?
Whenever you were reading it.
I mean, there were parts I laughed at. I mean, parts of it are funny.
Okay.
I'll be the first to say it. Some of it's funny. Obviously, he said some very, very nasty things about me, made up a whole bunch of shit. And if anyone believed that, that would bother me. Of course. Okay. But I don't think he's a particularly reliable storyteller. I don't think anyone reasonable would think that he
legit.
That it's legit.
I'm sure they just hear his past dealings with other people. They could probably get the general consensus of how the guy is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, I actually recently talked to Ralph.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. And that's something unrelated. And he told me that he was in contact with someone who was currently suing Efram for some deal that I think over like during the pandemic, Efram got into the whole supplying the government with PPE with the medical stuff. Yeah. He wasn't allowed to do it, so he was doing it through a third person. Ended up screwing that person or something like that. I don't know the details of the story,
he's just
but
repetitive.
He just never. He's going to end up in prison again. I assume he will, or either that or someone's gonna take care of him in one way or another. That's Not me. You know, nothing to do with it. I want nothing to do with it now. Just for the record, it's not a threat of any sort. But I just want him out of my life.
Yeah. When was the last time you guys talked? Was it when you left, or did you guys have to talk up through court and everything like that?
So the last time I saw him was when I was suing him. I sued him, and there was I forgot the term that they use where you both meet with your lawyers there.
It's like a
mediating.
It's like I think it was a deposition. Yes, it was a deposition. So there was like a deposition, and that was the last time we met. And the second he walked in the door, he like smiles. He's like, "Good to see you, bro. Good to fuck you, man." You know? Yeah. It's like, what, you're pretending we're friends. I'm fucking suing you, asshole. You know? It's like,
that's
insane.
Like, he's got a lot of
going back to like that time of your life. Do you like ever like regret anything of joining that, or do you think it was just a valuable life lesson?
Well, I mean, I regret a lot of things, right? When I look back at it, there are a lot of things I could have done differently that could have had a better result. But then again, you don't know what that result would have been in real life, because it's all it's like a butterfly effect, right? You know, everything you do affects everything else that happens, and you don't know how you would have reacted to other things that you didn't know was going to happen. So, but there's definitely things that I regret. I think nowadays I've learned my lesson. I would never actually go into business with someone like that in general, because it doesn't matter if you think, or you could put the blame on anyone else that you want. You'd be like, oh, he made all the decisions. It was his. It's not my fault, right? Because he was the one with the money and the one who was making the final decision. It was his decision to repackage the ammo. It was his decision to deliver this crap ammo or whatever, I wouldn't have done it, but you're working with him, so you're kind of supporting him. So that's kind of like a vote with your feet kind of situation. You're voting by participating. So in a way, I have to take responsibility for the things that he did as well, because I was his business partner. Even though I could argue with him against the decisions he made all I want, but I was still benefiting from the decisions he made. So I have to take responsibility myself for his decisions just by being involved. And there were some things that really did bother me that he did that I felt very badly for being involved with. Some things that didn't end up happening. Luckily, none of the stuff that he did ended up having a real bad situation on the ground, but he could have. Right. Like for example, early on he had. He was dealing with, he got a connection that to supply the king of Nepal. And the king of Nepal was trying to suppress a pro-democracy movement at the time. And Efram was running around trying to put together what he called a Save the King package, where he was trying to source attack helicopters and machine guns and things for the king to suppress a pro-democracy movement. And I was like, that's pretty fucked up, Efram. That's really fucked up. That's not legal. You definitely can't do that. You're not allowed to do, the government is not going to be happy if you're doing that. And he's like, just keep it working on your fuel contracts, bro. Just leave this stuff to me. So I mean, I wasn't going to benefit from that, but I was still working with this guy who was trying to supply a dictator. So that was early on, like in the early times. So that should have given me a pretty good warning. I should have learned something from that. But I told myself, I'm just gonna work on things that I'm comfortable with, and he could do. That's his thing, And then there was another thing during the Afghan contract that bothered me, where he bought a amount of ammo that was sight unseen without inspecting it. It was from Bulgaria. It was a small amount of ammo, relatively small. It was like 30,000 rounds, something like that. But they were putting it up for auction. We didn't have time to go there and inspect it, so he just put in a very low bid, and he won. And his thought process was, this stuff is so cheap that if they accept it, we're going to make a massive amount of money. If they don't accept it, didn't lose that much money, right? But when this stuff arrived in Afghanistan, they could have given that faulty, rusty ammo to the Afghan troops who would have been forced to use it. And we could have been responsible for a whole bunch of people dying because of using this crap ammo. Luckily for us and for the Afghans, that the U.S. Army took one look at that, and they're like, "This is shit. We're not giving this to anybody." And so they shoved it to the side of the runway in Kabul, because they didn't have anywhere to put it. And so when the New York Times investigator came to Afghanistan to investigate for the story and asked to see some of the stuff we were delivering, they pointed to that, and they're like, "Oh, that's some of the shit they delivered." And so he got a bunch of pictures of rusty, nasty ammo, and that's what ended up on the front page of the New York Times.
And you're like, this is such a small representation of what we had.
It was a fraction of a percent, but all the stuff that we had delivered that was good had already been issued out in the field, and the New York Times reporter was not going to go travel around.
Did they still pay for it, the government, or did they toss it?
No, they don't. They just refused it, and they're like, "We're not paying for this."
And they just kept it on the side of a
I don't know how. It was there for a few months, I know for sure. Yeah. For all I know, it's still there. It might still be there. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't think they have any ammo demilitarizing facilities over there to take it apart. So as far as I know, they probably either just dumped it in a ditch or it's still there, just rotting at the side of the runway.
Is there anything that during AEY that Efram taught you that benefits your businesses today?
Oh yeah, I learned a lot. I'll be the first one to say that I learned a lot from Efram. I learned a lot of what not to do, but I also learned a lot of positive things too. The value of a work ethic is probably the biggest one. I mean, he was obsessed. He would work. He worked more than was healthy for sure, but he would work like 18-hour days. We both did for periods of time. But he would never stop. Like, I would work when I needed to. For the build up to the Afghan contract, I was working 18-hour days. After we won it and we had to figure out all the overflight permits and all that stuff, I was working 18-hour days. Literally from the second I would wake up till the second I would fall asleep from exhaustion, I was just working the entire time, working while eating, working, on the toilet, like literally not stopping, just like in a constant state of panic. That's what it was. Like, oh my God, we're gonna lose this $300 million contract. Like constantly panicking. It was very, very stressful, very unhealthy. But he would do that regardless. So, and that was one of the big sources of his success. And I realized that working hard is a competitive advantage, even if you're not necessarily the smartest person, right? Just the fact that you work more than other people is a competitive advantage, because most people, our competitors, they were clocking in 9 to 5, right? And maybe they had 100 people, but they work in there in General Dynamics, but they weren't as motivated as we are. They weren't getting the rewards that we were going to get if we had won either. So they had less motivation. So that was a work ethic, I would say, would be the number one thing. Another thing that I learned that I think is a really valuable life lesson is that, and it's like a quote direct from Efram: "A negotiation is a contest of who could come up with a better reason for things to go their way." He was an incredible negotiator. I'll give him that. He was an incredible way too good. I mean, negotiated himself right out of the contract, with the whole trying to get a lower price on the ammo. But and that was his big flaw, is he didn't know when to stop. He wasn't able to let other people make money. That was his flaw. He had to make every last penny. I've seen him on contracts that I wasn't involved in, but I've seen him like screw someone over. And the guy was going to lose his business. He was going to be bankrupt just so he could make an extra 3% margin on his own deal.
Very narcissistic traits.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to diagnose him. I'll leave that to the mental health professionals. But not a guy you want to do business with. I could tell you that. Just not a healthy person to be around in general. Yeah.
When you guys were doing the movie and everything, did you get to meet? Like, did Miles Tower come out to meet you to get an op on how you are or anything like that?
So he didn't do a character study or anything like that. But I did meet him. I met him. So I have a little cameo in the movie in the beginning. Yeah, home, right? Exactly. I'm playing guitar. You can see me in my 3 seconds of fame. And I flew out to LA to do that cameo and record the song. We recorded the song before, and then you're kind of just mouthing along to it in the movie. So that's how they get the good sound quality. So it's kind of karaoke in a way. But I went out to LA to shoot that scene, and he was there during that scene, so I met him there. Very nice guy, very tall guy, very, very tall.
Really?
He's like 6'3" or something. I don't know. Yeah, he's like super tall. He's almost as tall as Bradley Cooper, who's even taller. Bradley Cooper is
really?
like Cooper is like insanely tall, like 6'4" or something. I'm sure someone in the comments is going to look up his actual height on YouTube. Oh, you idiot! You don't even know. Blah blah blah. And after doing all these interviews, I've realized I start thinking like, oh, that's going to cause a bunch of comments.
Oh,
that's going to cause a bunch of comments.
Oh, we know. Yeah, we've had it.
Yeah. I'll tell you, my biggest surprise from doing interviews and getting published on YouTube is how much anti-Semitism is out there.
Really?
Oh, really?
Oh my god!
On your comments and everything too?
If you go to the concrete thing and you go through the
does
comments,
not surprise me.
like
honestly.
a good 20 to 30%. I don't want to put numbers on it, but a decent amount are like nasty things against
No
Jews.
way.
Really?
Yeah, really
Wow.
nasty. Really nasty.
I know it is. Yeah,
YouTube.
people
Yeah.
comment.
Just like I've never met someone who
Yeah.
thinks
I've never
that
met
way
someone,
though.
yeah.
Yeah, me neither, and that's why I was surprised. I was like, I've never met anyone in
where are
person
you?
who's an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's because I'm Jewish and they don't want to say it to my face. You
Yeah.
know, maybe I don't know. Maybe a lot of my friends are Jews, obviously, but I know plenty of non-Jews. It was surprising to me how common it was, and maybe people just let out their nasty side online. So,
True.
hi guys, go ahead, have fun, go ahead. You make fun of my bald head, make fun of how white I am, right? Say nasty things about my culture and heritage. Go ahead.
He's heard it all. At this
Yeah,
point.
I've heard it all. I really don't care.
But the good
I
thing-
find it a little entertaining. It's kind of fun.
Right? It kinda is sometimes.
Yeah,
You really took time
Yeah.
out of your day to just sit here and hate
Oh,
on
yeah.
it. And then
Yes. Like you're
comment.
watching my video,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
You hate me that much? I mean,
He's driving us engagement.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. That's sometimes I like to reply to it because like especially if it's kind of funny, you know. Like one guy commented, he's like, "Oh, this guy even admitted he was involved with the Mossad," and I was like, I'm just curious. Like, where did I say that? You know, like
Tell me where.
Yeah. I'm really honestly curious. He never responded, of course. But yeah. So I've become a Zen master of it. It doesn't bother me. And I don't mind the engagement. So go ahead, guys. Hate away. Drive that engagement. Yeah.
There's one thing I want to kind of finish up on in terms
Yeah.
of the Wardogs era of your life, and then moving into what you're doing now. At the end of the movie,
Yeah.
Henry came in and gave
Yeah.
you a
briefcase?
Is that even relatively close
God,
to true?
I wish that was real.
Okay.
Yeah. No, of course not.
Yeah.
And then-
Why would Henry do that?
I was like,
It
nice
makes-
guy.
And the
He is not a
timing
nice guy. I mean, maybe he is nice in his personal life, but
Sure.
like he's not. I mean, first of all, I think it's illegal to have that much cash, without declaring it. He's not going to be breaking the law, smuggling cash in for me, and it benefits him zero. He's not. Actually, after I left AEY, I had started my own company briefly to do this business before the whole legal thing brought it down. And I got back in contact with Henry, and he was more than happy to do business with me.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I mean, he's like, yeah, business is business. And Henry is different than how he was portrayed in the movie. In real life, he's more of like a Swiss banker.
Okay.
Yeah, just very, very calm, no drama.
Right.
Very professional.
Did he
very
have the
clean
shades?
cut. No, he didn't. He's a very clean cut guy.
Okay.
Very clean cut. He looks like a banker too.
Yeah.
He didn't look like Bradley Cooper in the movie. Bradley had a character he was going for, and he made a cool character.
Yeah.
But it wasn't how Henry was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when all this was going on, right? All this is just happening, kind of feeling like maybe everything's in shambles almost when the lawsuits are going on.
Yeah.
What allowed you to transition to what you're doing now, and what are you
Right.
kind of working on right now?
My favorite topic.
There you go.
So the way after the whole Wardogs thing ended, I got sentenced to 7 months of house arrest. I was very lucky. I pled guilty. I mean, Efram pled guilty too, but he committed another crime which invalidated his plea agreement, and that's why he got 4 years. He got entrapped into picking up a gun by an undercover ATF agent.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah, and right before he picked up the gun, he said, "What can I say? Once a gun runner, always a gun runner." And then he picks up the gun, and that's where.
Oh my God.
Maybe Jonah Hill character's a little bit
Maybe
more
the
like we
character
think.
Yeah, right then the ATF agent slaps cuffs on him and he's like, "You're felon in possession of a firearm," because he had already
my
pled
gosh.
guilty to the first thing, so he was officially.
Why
a
was he
felon.
grabbing a gun? What was he doing?
So the way he got into that situation is because there was a 3-year gap between when they raided the office and when we got sentenced, because for the first half a year they said they weren't going to charge us at all because they wanted the ammo and they didn't want to rock the boat, right? Yeah. And so then once the New York Times kind of rocked the boat and they couldn't, sweep this under the rug anymore, the Army was like, "Oh, we had no idea that this was happening. We're going to charge them with fraud, because we told them no Chinese, and they delivered Chinese without our knowledge, right?" But Ralph decided. So I pled guilty. Alex and I pled guilty right away because we were like, we didn't have the money to fight them. I mean, you need like hundreds of thousands of dollars if you're going to hire a lawyer to fight the feds in court. And Efram had just screwed me out of all the money he owed me, so I didn't have any money. So we're pleading guilty. It was really our only choice. Efram fought him for I think a year and a half or something until he realized he was going to lose, and then he pled guilty too. But Ralph decided to take it all the way to trial. Ralph was like, "I'm fighting this in court," and because of we pled guilty, part of the plea agreement is that we agreed to testify if there's a trial. So we had to testify against Ralph, and I just said the truth.
Yeah.
I didn't lie or anything. And I felt really bad because I actually liked Ralph. He's a really nice guy. And I'm still on good terms with Ralph, even though I testified against him in court, But we're still on good terms. Like he understands, that I had to do it. But because Ralph went to trial, that extended everything out. And there was actually 2 trials because the first trial was a hung jury. There was one person who refused to convict him, and so they had to do the whole thing again, a second trial, and then they convicted him. And Ralph ended up spending 4 years in prison as well. Oh, yeah. And Ralph got screwed over by Efram stole $1.5 million of his dollars. Whoa. Yeah, all the money that Ralph put into the contract, Efram never gave it back to him, as well as, of course, never giving him a penny of the profits as well. So he screwed Ralph over for millions and millions of dollars.
God, were you getting paid as the deal was going on?
No, unfortunately not. Yeah, so Efram's rationale was, we need every penny we can get to finance the deal. So we're going to all get paid at the end.
Gotcha.
So he kept on rolling all of our money back into financing the deal, which made sense at the time, as long as you get paid at the end, right? Yeah. But
so you guys weren't driving matching Porsches in the same building?
No, we were driving matching Audis actually.
Oh, that's cool.
He had an A6, I had an A4. That's cool. And we did live in the same building.
Oh, did you? Okay, cool.
Yeah. It wasn't as nice as they show in the movie. That building in particular was built actually years after that whole story happened. So yeah, they some real estate friend of mine told me that I would have had no idea about that little tidbit of information. He's like, "Oh, I know where that building where they shot that scene," but yeah, that wasn't even built back in 2007. So yeah, we actually lived in the Flamingo complex in Miami Beach. People who know Miami know that complex is. I don't think it's like that anymore, but back then it was well known as like a party thing of South Beach. Yeah,
That's
a lot of all the party people lived there. So there was always gorgeous women at the pool, and it was a happening scene. I've heard now it's turned into more of a family friendly thing. I guess because all those party people eventually got pregnant and grew up. Exactly. So now it's a family thing.
I feel like with that whole, while you guys are going through all the court proceedings every day, it must have just been just knowing how the court process and how dragged out it is.
Yeah.
It's just probably I imagine in your situation, it's just hell.
It was terrible.
And even on a day where it's like nothing's going on, you still have this glooming
just so
thing.
anxious. What might happen.
I was stressed out for a good 3 years.
I can imagine.
Yeah, because the way it works is it's up to the judge to sentence you, right? And the judge has it's at the judge's discretion, right? I mean, the judge has there's usually like a maximum sentence they can give you, and they can give you anything up to that maximum, right? So when we pled guilty, they had, because we had 71 aircraft loads with the Chinese ammo, and we had signed this document on each aircraft load, they considered each one of those 71 deliveries as a separate crime. So they were going to charge us with 71 acts of fraud, each with a 5-year maximum sentence.
That's usually how it goes. They give you like it's usually the same amount number, but you never really get that.
Right. Well, the deal they made us was they're like, if you fight us, we're going to charge you with 71 counts of fraud, and you could get up to 355 years in prison. Right. But if you plead guilty, we'll combine it into one count, and then you can get max 5 years. But we'll tell the judge that you pled guilty, and so give him to the low end of the sentence, right? Wow. So we're like, well, let's see,
That's a pretty
low,
easy.
355 or maybe just probation, which should I choose here? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, okay. And of course, even if you're innocent and you fight them, you have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to prove your innocence, unless you go with a public defender, or as the private lawyers like to call them, the public pretenders, right? Because they have like 200 cases on their docket while the prosecutors have 10. So it's not really a fair fight. But anyway, so after the whole thing was done, and I got sentenced to 7 months of house arrest. Efram got 4 years in prison. Ralph got 4 years in prison. Alex got 5 months of house arrest, so he got even less. I was at home. I had the ankle tracking thing on my ankle, and I was playing lots of guitar. Been playing guitar since I was a kid, so entertaining myself. And I really missed playing with a drummer, so I wanted a beat to play with, because no drummer's going to bring his whole drum set over my house. So I bought a drum machine, which is a tabletop thing with a bunch of buttons. You can make beats on it and play it in a loop and play your guitar along to it. But every time I wanted the beat to change, I'd have to stop playing my guitar, press a button on the machine, go back to playing my guitar, and it was like really annoying. Interrupted the music, so I thought I need a drum machine that I could use with my foot. Went online to look for it, couldn't find anything like it, but all my musician friends thought it was an awesome idea, so I decided to build it. And here, I actually brought one.
Beautiful!
Yeah, I'm
to show you.
Yeah, I'm super interested because I play guitar too.
Oh, you play guitar? Awesome.
Yeah.
So this is the world's first guitar pedal drum machine hybrid.
That is so
It's called
cool.
the Beat Buddy. Yeah.
You can also use some of your cablers.
Yeah, the cablies. Yeah,
I saw those.
Yeah,
These are awesome.
There you go.
That is
you
so
just
cool.
press the thing with your foot like that, and you plug that into the PA system or your amplifier. And depending on what you do with the pedal, it does different things with the drum. So if you just tap the pedal, it throws in a drum fill. It's a different drum fill every time, so it sounds natural. If you hold it down, it does a transition. You let go, and it goes to the next beat. So you can go from like verse to chorus.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Did you have somebody help you design that?
Yeah,
everything?
I could not do this all by myself. I was studying after I left AEY. I went back to school and started studying mechanical engineering, but I didn't know enough to design this. So I hired a engineering team to do because you need a bunch of different types of engineering. You need mechanical design, which does the physical aspect. You need electrical design, which does the PCB board. You need software design, which does the software that runs on it. This also has software that goes on your PC and your Mac, so you could put your own beats, your own drum sets in there, so your own custom stuff as well.
That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. So this was my first product, did very, very well.
Is it still doing well?
Yeah, it's still doing well, actually. This came out in 2014, and it's still our best-selling product.
Mostly like direct-to-consumer, or are you selling it?
We do both.
Okay.
So our direct-to-consumer in the United States is about half, 50% direct-to-consumer, and half to like Guitar Center and Samash and the retailers. And internationally, it's about like 20% direct-to-consumer and through distributors, 80%.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys have any other products you've developed?
Yeah, so we came out with an additional line of music products. We have the world's most advanced looper pedal. It's called the Aeros Loop Studio. I didn't bring it, but it's the world's first looper with that looks more like a DAW on your computer. So you see the waveforms as you're recording and as it's playing loops. And the cable management device, the Cably that winds up your cable.
I was looking at your son, I'm like, God damn, we need that.
Yeah, and so we have 6 different products, music-related products. But the thing I'm most excited excited about is our latest product, which is our first non-music related product. This is our first mass market product. So here, I'll tell you the story.
Yeah, please.
Of how we came up with this before I do the grand reveal. My brother and I, who's my partner with my music company, we were hanging out at home. We were smoking weed, right, as we do, and got the munchies. And we were both eating mango. Mango's delicious, great, and it's great.
It's really
healthy.
That's a really healthy.
It's a great high.
Exactly.
Yeah, you should like Doritos, McDonald's, and stuff.
So it's got the juice, so it gets rid of the cotton mouth. You know, it's sweet, so it gets it's good for the munchies. But the downside of mango is it gets all the fibers stuck in your teeth. It's very fibrous. So we went to my bathroom. We were like flossing our teeth in the mirror to get rid of all the fibers. And I told my brother, I'm like, this is such a pain in the ass, right? Everyone hates to floss. If we could create a machine that could floss your teeth for you, everyone would want that. And so we started spitballing ideas, came up with all sorts of crazy contraptions, but eventually we settled.
Yeah, what does this look like?
On a product called InstaFloss.
I love that.
And this is this is just the head component. This attaches to like a water tank that has a pump in it, and it uses water jets coming out of this end, pointing that way on both sides. And what you do is you just stick your teeth in it like that.
Oh, okay.
You just move it around, kind of like you're brushing your teeth.
Exactly.
Really
You just
cool.
do one sweep. You just do it from the side all the way to the other side. And it does both the top, the bottom, the outside, and the inside of the teeth. And it keeps these water jets at a 90-degree angle to your gum line. So there's Water Pick. Water Pick is the famous water flosser out there. It uses a single jet. You have to trace your gum line with it. You have to go on the back side.
Oh, okay.
And so it's a huge pain in the butt, and you have to do it at an exact 90-degree angle. Most people, when they start it, they don't really know how to use it, so it sprays everywhere, makes a big mess. It's also very difficult to get on the back side of the teeth properly at a right 90-degree angle. So this, the way it's built, keeps the water jets at an exact 90-degree angle to your teeth without any effort, without any aiming. So all you have to do is just put it in your mouth, sweep it across, and
Easy
you're done.
for everybody.
10
cool.
seconds. It's faster than a water pick. It's more effective than string because the water gets under the gum line and gets rid of the bacteria. So it's easier, faster, more painless.
Sure.
Everyone should buy it.
How much is the product?
Instafloss.com, like Instagram but flossing. InstaFloss. So right now we're in our first production run. We are going to deliver to the people who did the pre-orders. So it's available for pre-order right now. We're going to deliver in December. The price right now, if you pre-order, is $199. And retail price will be $299. So get it now, and you'll save yourself $100.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I was on the website for that, and it looked like you have a whole team behind this too.
Yes.
Doctors and everything on
Yes.
that too. So did this take, how long have you been in production of this whole entire product?
So
Yeah, the R&D must have been pretty wild for that.
we've been working on this product for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we had the first idea. That initial mango story happened 5 years ago, and it took us 3 years to get the prototype functional. And it took us an additional 2 years to get it manufacturable.
Wow.
Yeah, because we had it. Because people who develop products know this. Just because you can get a prototype to work doesn't mean you can manufacture it. Because the like mass manufacturing, especially with plastic parts, it does like injection molding. So it like stamps like big metal plates together and puts plastic in there. And the plastic, the part has to be certain specific shapes so it could get so it could get popped out easily. If it's too complicated of a shape, you can't do injection molding. So we had to like redesign the whole thing in order to make it manufacturable. This uses 12 water jets compared to the Water Pick's 1 jet. So it's 12 times the water, 12 times the power, 12 times the water pressure to make sure that it doesn't leak and things like that. So it was a very, very challenging thing to build. And it's crazy because this product is a complicated product. This is a high-tech product. It connects to your computer. It has all sorts of software on it. But the InstaFloss was much harder to build because it was just like the mechanical aspect of it.
Blowing a hole through your teeth.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it has to be certain pressure. The water jets need to be a certain shape in order to hit your gum line at a effective way.
Very complicated.
So we've been working on this for 5 years, but we're at the finish line.
That's awesome.
About to deliver in December, and that's why I'm here doing the
trying to be able to.
What's the approval for that? Is there an approval process with like FDA or anything like that?
So there is the ADA acceptance, which you would need to. It's actually not required. But most people do it just because it's good for marketing. It's really just a marketing thing. But that costs I think is like $200,000 or something. Whoa. So we're gonna do that after after we are already on the market. But we did do all the scientific verification and as you saw on our site, one of the members of our board, one of our advisors, is the head of the ADA science division.
Okay.
So she advised us how to do the experiments to verify that the thing is effective. It was actually pretty gross. To verify that it was effective, we used pig heads because pigs have very similar teeth to humans, and so a lot of dental research is done on pigs, and a lot of research in medical research is done on pigs. And in order to do it, we had to get the pig. We went to a butcher and we're like, we just want the head, and we wanted you to cut it like this way. Yeah. So he had to cut it this way. So we could access the two halves of the teeth. And then we had used like disclosing fluid, they call it. It's like a dye that goes onto the teeth, and then we use a device and see where the dye still is, where it isn't, to see how effective it is. And that's how you do the testing to make sure that it's medically valid and functional.
And did it take you a while to nail it down to get where you wanted it to hit, like everywhere, or
I mean that's why it took us 3 years to build the initial prototype. Yeah, we had to experiment with the shape of the head, how many jets, the placement of the jets, in order, because people also have different sized teeth, so we had to build it at the sweet spot. So according to our experiments, this is good for like about 85% of people. Okay. There's some people on either end of the, if you have like really crooked teeth, it might not fit, but 85% of people it'll fit.
Did you expect it to take this long when you got into it?
I feel like staying motivated during all that just to keep it going is probably very difficult.
It's very difficult.
It's a long haul. Like it's like it was 5 years.
5 years. Yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah, it's a very long time. We never thought it would take that long. I thought it would take 1-2 years. Yeah. That's what I thought it would be.
The third year, probably, fuck, man.
For real. Right, well, the thing is, at the third year, we thought we were almost done because we're like, we have a prototype. It works. It's everything. We're finally there. Now we just need to manufacture it. And then we send it to the factory, and they're like, you guys need to change this. So we had like a huge list, and we're like, oh shit. And we had to like go back and then like once you change one thing, it breaks another, and and then we got hit by the supply chain issues with the pandemic. There was some like chips that weren't available, and then even like the plastic that we were going to make it out of became hard to get because of all the PPE stuff was eating up the supply of plastic. So we couldn't even get the plastic that we were going to manufacture it out of, which was insane. I could not believe that the world was running out of plastic.
Perfect time, right?
Yeah. So it was just one thing after another, but we're really at the finish line now. We've already started the manufacturing process. That's awesome. We've already made all the molds, and so we're almost there. We're really there.
Was it the Beat Buddy that you guys crowdfunded and had like a really successful campaign with that one?
So we actually crowdfunded the InstaFloss too. So this was our first crowdfunding campaign, and we because as I said at the end of Wardogs, unfortunately Henry did not give me that suitcase of cash, so I didn't have a bunch of money to. In order to fund this thing with. So I made a deal with the engineering team. I was very lucky to find them because their lead engineer was a drummer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he is a drummer, I should say. He's still there. But he understood the value of the product immediately. He was like, all my musician friends are always asking me to jam with them, and I never have time to jam with them. They would love this thing. And so, I told, and they quoted me a price of $130,000 to build it, just the engineering without any manufacturing. Wow. At the time, I only had $25,000 to my name. Wow. So, which I had saved up because I had gotten back into massage after because I wasn't allowed to do the arms dealing thing. I was going back to school, trying to make myself look good to the judge. I volunteered at a soup kitchen, the whole thing. And so I had $25,000 saved up. That was like everything I had. And they're like, well, if you give me the $25,000 as a down payment, we'll build it for you. And then you could take that prototype, do the crowdfunding, and give us the rest.
Wow. So you sunk basically
I sunk every last penny into it. Yeah. Wow. That I had. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
ballsy.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I knew it was. I knew. So the thing was, I knew the concept was good because every musician I had talked to about it was excited about it. They're like, I would love to have one of those. That's super cool, and the fact that the engineering team was willing to take a risk on like 75% of the money only after it works, I was like, okay, these guys feel very confident they can build this. And so I'm like, if they feel that confident, they're willing to risk 105 of their own, 1,000 of their own money on this. I'll be willing to risk 25 grand. Of
being from that area, like a musician, it's like, I imagine it's way, because like the best projects are something you personally have an issue with.
Right.
So it's like you as a musician, you knew like, okay, well, this is a pain in the butt. Like, I wish I had that.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that probably helped a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Just because I knew I wanted it for myself, and it wasn't just me, because all my musician friends, they wanted one too. So I was very confident that it would sell. The one thing I was nervous about would be how expensive it would be to build, right? And their initial estimates were actually pretty high, which was like just on the edge of like whether or not it would sell in the market. Yeah. But then when I went to manufacturing, usually it was very strange. Usually it goes the other way. Usually the engineers underestimate things, and then you go to the manufacturer and they're like, oh, they didn't take this and this and this and this into account, so it's more expensive. In this case, I was very lucky. It ended up being less expensive
nice.
to manufacture than the engineers initially estimated. And that's what made it viable in the market, and that's why it's doing so well.
Did it hit right away, or did it take a little bit of time to get out there?
The way we did it was, while the engineers were building it, I built a mock-up prototype that didn't function, but it looked like it. And we created a demo video where we faked it, where it looked like it was working. And I put up a website and said, sign up to our mailing list. This is the product we're building. We'll announce when it's available. And someone from like one of the guitar forums had found the website, and they posted a link on the guitar forum, and we immediately got 500 people sign up.
Oh wow!
Like in like 3 days, and so I was like, wow, so many people. Like I didn't even post that; someone else had done it, and people were really excited about it. And this was back in 2013 when this was happening, right when Facebook was just getting into advertising. So back then, Facebook advertising was pretty cheap. And so we spent I think it was like $1,000, and we got something like 5,000 people sign up to the mailing.
That's big. It's a pretty good conversion. That's crazy.
Yeah, the rate on return back then was amazing.
Yeah,
it's not like that anymore.
Facebook advertising is so expensive now.
Terrible now. It's terrible. We still spend money on Facebook, but it's barely profitable.
Yeah.
It's really barely profitable. They really managed to squeeze every penny out of you. Yeah.
I find that in the movie, like they make it seem like your character like wasn't very entrepreneurial before. But I feel like you've been like, my own research seems like you've had that entrepreneurship spirit since you were a kid. I said this story on the Concrete podcast, but my first business was when I was 6 years old. Do you want the story?
100%. Yes.
Okay. So when I was 6, we were living in Israel and lived in this apartment building where we didn't have an elevator and there was no garbage chute. So you'd have to take your trash out to the dumpster on the corner. And I'm one of 9 children. My family, my dad was a rabbi, and so we didn't have a TV. We grew up without a TV at home, so there were, he had to keep himself busy somehow, right? So I'm like third from the oldest, and my dad asked me and my older sister to take the trash out, and we were complaining. We were like, oh, it's so hard to take the trash out. We don't want to take the trash. And my dad's like, oh, you're looking at all this wrong. All you have to do, if you think about what's going on here, all the neighbors probably don't like taking their trash out either, right? And we're like, yeah, so? And they're like, well, if you can go to them and offer them a service, and you say, I'll take your trash out every other day, and for $0.25 a week. Right? In Israel, it's a shekel. That's the value of $0.25 about. And we're like, oh, that's a pretty good idea. We could make money. And so my sister and I went to the neighbors, and we got signed up. I think it was either 7 or 8 neighbors to our subscription service. And we had like a big cart, like this big wireframe cart on wheels, and we'd put all the trash bags into the cart and take it down the stairs and take it to the dumpster. And after about a week, we complained to my dad, and we told him, we're like, this is like way too much work. This is like, we were small, and these are big garbage bags, and the dumpster, it's like huge. And we had to like swing it to get it over into the entrance because we were short. Yeah. And my dad was like, well, we told our dad, this is too much work. We want to quit. And my dad is like, well, what if you made twice as much money? Would you quit then? And we're like, well, twice as much, maybe that's worth it. And so my dad's like, well, you could just raise the price. And we're like, well, we can't raise the price. We just told him a week ago it was a quarter a week. And he's like, well, if you don't raise the price, you're going to quit. So they could either take it or leave it. And we're like, okay. So we go to the neighbors, and we're like, we're raising the price to 50 cents a week. And most of them just said, yeah, no problem. We'll pay 50 cents a week. And one guy complains. He's like, you can't just double the price. You have to raise this week 5 cents, next week 10 cents. Oh, double. This is crazy. And we're like, this is what we're doing. We're doubling the price. We stuck to our guns, and he's like, fine. And he grumbled, but he paid us.
He still paid it?
He still paid it. And then we had one neighbor who canceled, and from then on we saw their daughter take out the trash, she'd never done that before, but I guess they realized that they have a perfectly healthy child of their own that they could get to work for them. Why pay the neighbors' kids to take out their trash? So we still maintained our most people, and we were making twice as much money, and so that was going well. And then after about a few weeks after that, my sister was like, oh, this is too much work, and she decided to quit. And then I thought, well, that's double the money again for me. So I'm making 4 times now than what we were making in the beginning. And then I started really, really banking for a kid, and had like a big Ziploc bag filled with shekels that every day the ice cream truck would come around, and I would be like, I've got money. I can buy myself an ice cream. And so I'd buy myself ice cream every day and got to be a fat little kid. Until my money eventually ran out, and then I got less fat.
There you go.
That's crazy. I mean, you've always had that kind of mindset. And it's cool to grow up in a family that has directed you to that, and give you that mindset as a young age and everything.
Yeah. My dad was very entrepreneurial. He's always had ideas. He would hire us. He was a rabbi, but he had he was one of the first guys to have a weekly newsletter through the fax. It was in the early 90s, and he signed up he ended up at his peak. Eventually, he moved to email once email became a thing. At his peak, I think he had about 300,000 people reading his weekly letter.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, all over the world. Yeah, he built up quite a thing. So he was more of a virtual rabbi. He didn't have his own synagogue. He was a virtual rabbi, he would always send out these, the way he would make his money is people would donate. He would send out these letters asking people to donate. And so he'd hire us kids to fold letters and put stamps on envelopes. And so it always had a little sweatshop in the living room, of kids, folding mail. Yeah.
What do you think I had?
Kids are smoking cigarettes.
Exactly.
I got 9 employees right here.
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Do you find yourself... I don't know if you were religious when you were younger. Are you still religious? Or
No. I got out of the religion. I first started doubting it. So my family is Orthodox Jewish, which is fundamentalist. It's an intense version of Judaism. When I was I wouldn't say the one thing, but one of the good things about the culture of Orthodox Judaism is that Judaism in general is that there's a very high value placed on education. So my parents always encouraged us to read a lot. They would always take us on family trips to the local library and get books. And I thought the coolest books were all the sci-fi books because they had the coolest covers, spaceships and stuff like that. And so I started reading a lot of sci-fi. And sci-fi, a lot of it is written by scientists. and who tend to have a very skeptical view of religion. And so that kind of started me thinking, you know, why do we believe in this thing called God? And did that thing thousands of years ago really happen? How do we know? And so I started doubting it and asking my dad questions, and he would like respond. And I kind of went back and forth throughout my teen years until eventually I got to college. And I took a general anthropology course, and I realized I learned all the science of how they do carbon dating and linguistics and genetics, and there was just a huge amount of scientific knowledge that contradicted the version of the Bible that my family taught me. Mm-hmm. So the version that Orthodox Jews believe in is that it's literally true. Like the Bible is exactly how it's written there. That's how it happened. Like there's no interpretation. There's like Moses really was at Mount Sinai. He really got the thing from God. You know, Noah really was in the ark. There really was a worldwide flood that killed everyone except for Noah and 2 of each animal in his ark. You know, and when I studied anthropology, I'm like, there's no way that's true, right? Because Chinese culture goes back 5,000 years before the flood, and Native Americans have genetics. Genetics shows that they've been in North and South America for about 20,000 years, and they didn't get killed out by the flood. And there's no evidence in the fossil record of a worldwide mass extinction event 4,000 years ago. Yeah. So on and on and on. It's just many, many different things from many different branches of science. It's not like, oh, this one branch of science contradicts it. It's like, no, like all of them do. Yeah. And they can't all be wrong because we're all using cell phones and flying in airplanes, and science knows how the world works. That's why that's how we have our society. So I realized that there is no way that the version of Judaism that I was taught is actually true. And then it made me think, well, then how do you know what's true, right? And I realized, well, there's two truths in the universe, right? In life, I should say. There's your subjective truth, which is what you experience as a person, right? And nobody could take that away from you. If you say, I felt this, nobody could say, no, you didn't, right? Well, because you're the only one who knows that, right? And then there's the objective truth, right? There's the world around you, and they're both real. Right? It doesn't matter how strongly you believe you can fly. If you step off a building, you're going to fall and you're going to die. Even if you believe 100% you can fly, it's just not true objectively, right? It may be subjectively true to you. You may really believe that you can fly, but it's not objectively true. And I realized that spirituality is a subjective thing, and religion is an objective thing, right? Because spirituality is your own experience of, when you listen to music and you get in the zone, or you create something, or you have an amazing experience, right? Spirituality is an experience. And people have all sorts of amazing experiences through religion. But religion is a system where they try to tell you facts about the world, objective facts, and they try to organize society based on that, right? So it's a way of organizing society. So in the religion I grew up with, they said the objective truth is that this story with Noah actually happened, right? And I know that the objective truth is not that. So the question is how do you know what the objective truth is, right? And the best system that humanity has come up with these days to discover what the objective truth is the scientific method. And that's how we've discovered how the universe works, right? That's why our microphones work and our cell phones work and our airplanes fly, because we've discovered the laws of how the universe functions by using the scientific method. So if you want to know what the objective truth is of the universe, it needs to stand up to the scientific method. And if it doesn't, then you shouldn't give it as much weight as something that does, right? So if you tell me, hey, there are these things flying through the air that you can't see and you can't feel and you can't hear and you can't sense with any of your physical senses, but they're real. Well, how do you know that? Well, if I take this bit of metal wire and I connect it to this thing, I can sense they're called radio waves, and they interact with the metal in this way, and I could do an experiment. And if you do that experiment, that'll work for you too. No matter who does the experiment, it works for them the same way. That's the scientific method. You make a claim, you make an experiment to verify that claim, everyone else tests it, and that's how you know that this is an objective truth that works for everyone, regardless of your opinion, right? So, for me, it's very important to separate the subjective part of life from the objective part of life, because if you get them confused, you can get in trouble, right? If you think that something is objectively true and it's not, and you base your life on that, then you're not going to lead the best life, you know. Like with my family, it was like, oh, you need to, it's objectively true that you need to keep kosher, right? You know, that you can't have a cheeseburger, you can't mix dairy and meat, right? If I believe that, I'm never going to enjoy a cheeseburger in my life, right? My life will be that much less enjoyable because I believe this factually incorrect assertion about the objective truth in the universe. So after that, I realized, well, I'm going to keep an open mind, but I'm going to hold everything. I'm going to hold claims to the same level of rigor as any other claim about the universe. If you want to claim that unicorns exist, you have to prove that unicorns exist. You want to claim that Santa is real, you have to show that Santa is real. You want to claim that God is real, show that God is real, right? Just like Santa. You know, why are you laughing at someone believing in Santa, but you're not laughing at someone who believes in God?
That's a good
right?
point. Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just an old man with a beard who looks at the bad things and the good things you do and rewards and punishes you based on that, right? It's just the kid version of God, right? So
the kid version of God.
It's the kid. That's what Santa is, the kid version of God. So so I treat it the same. Now, my family's still very religious. I have many friends who are still religious. I treat everyone with respect. I don't think that they are stupid or anything like that. I just think they're wrong. And there's many. I'm wrong about many things. And I think the important thing is to be humble about things and to realize that we're all wrong about most things. Most of us don't know anything about most things. We all know our tiny little sliver of things that we've encountered. We're all experts in certain things, and we're all ignorant in most things. So, you know, I was forced to look into the whole religion aspect just because of the way I was brought up, and I didn't want to lead that lifestyle. And I figured, hey, if I'm going to lead this extremely religious and restrictive lifestyle, it better be true, right? There better be a payoff at the end, right? If I'm not going to eat a cheeseburger, I want to go to fucking heaven, you know? But if there's no heaven, then I'm eating that cheeseburger because it's going to be one or the other. So for me, I was forced into making those assessments and those analysis, but most people, they're not forced into it, so they just believe what they grew up with, and they're comfortable with that. And I will never go and say, hey, you're thinking wrong, you should believe this other thing. I don't care what you think, as long as it doesn't you know, go against other people's rights. You know, so if you think, oh, I believe in this thing, therefore you need to do something, then now we're talking about something else. You know, then we can discuss about what is objectively true, right? Because then it goes into the objective reality when you're trying to force other people to go according to your ideas of the universe, right? You could believe whatever you want subjectively and be happy with it in your own subjective reality, as long as it doesn't go against other people's lives.
Check into the objective.
Yeah.
That's always one of those things too. It's always like growing up, I've never really had a religious family, really, but I grew up Catholic, and same exact kind of thing. You know, as I'm growing up, I'm seeing this. I started looking at how people. I like some of the ways that people live their life based on, you know, Catholicism or something, but it just became culty almost to me, and I'm like, this is weird. Everyone's sitting here chanting, and then we drink wine as blood, and a piece of bread as body.
Weird.
I'm like, all right, like this is cool. Like, you know, it's really, you know, it kind of turned me off to the whole entire thing. And that's when I started thinking about it too. I'm like, what is really going on?
Yeah,
like,
drinking the blood. I always thought that was weird. I remember the first time I went into a Catholic a cathedral, I was really freaked out.
I'm still
It's really weird.
I have this weird phobia about this.
Those are weird.
They're super weird. There's like paintings on the wall of people being tortured. And it's like a death cult. I mean, it is a death cult.
They're all like chanting.
There's a guy hanging on a cross.
That's
a way to do it.
Super graphic. It's very disturbing. It was very disturbing. I think I was like 18 or 19 the first time I'd been into a Catholic cathedral. I was like traveling in Europe and went to. They have beautiful cathedrals, but and I remember one cathedral I was in. I realized that the floor there were these like big like square blocks, and they had like Latin written in them. And I asked someone like, what are these like Latin things written? And they're like, oh, those are gravestones. People are buried in the floor, and those are like the names.
Damn.
They're like, we're walking on the gravestones, and I was like, this is really weird. This is
not
I don't like it here.
Yeah. I was also tripping on mushrooms at the time.
That's even weirder. That's like the worst place to do that.
Yeah. It was very, very,
Like
very
shit.
disturbing. Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, I try to be respectful of all religions and people, and I would never impose my views on people. But if people ask me my opinion, I'm more than happy to share my opinion as well.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I still have a great relationship with my family, even though they're still in the cult.
In the cult.
And,
In
and I'm
Matrix.
not. Yeah. You know what they say the difference between a cult and a religion? 100 years.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so very much
thank
for
you.
coming on.
My
I
pleasure.
really appreciate it. We've had such a
This
good
is awesome.
conversation.
I've learned a lot.
I've learned a ton.
It's been really entertaining. This
you
is
wanna give
cool.
it-
Thank you.
Yeah.
Grab your products. We
Yes.
do a quick
Yeah,
shout
quick
out.
shout
Get a
out.
nice little.
Let's do that. Where did I put that? There it is.
There's
Okay,
InstaFloss.
so this is the Beat Buddy. It's like your buddy that plays the beat, right? The company is called Singular Sound. You can go to singularsound.com. Singular, like your singular self, right? You can be a one-man band. That's the idea. Singularsound.com. And for all you non-musicians, everyone else, and the musicians as well, you need a floss too. You can go to instafloss.com and you can get yourself an InstaFloss pre-order. Save yourself $100. Be one of the first awesome people to get this awesome new product, and take care of your dental health. It's important. Actually, dental health directly related to your entire health, because
You get like heart conditions as well.
That's
and
right.
Things like
you
that.
know,
Really?
Yeah.
that's right. People who don't take care of their dental health are much at higher risk for heart disease.
Really?
Because it's your entire blood system goes through openings in your mouth. You have like when you're bleeding, that's like an opening into your system, and you're eating and putting all sorts of stuff in your mouth.
Yeah, so
a lot
many
of bacteria
infections.
goes in there, gets traveled around your system, get all sorts of inflammation, heart disease. You should take care of your dental health. It's very important.
Very
so
important.
InstaFloss makes it easier. Instafloss.com, like Instagram, but flossing.
Get this or you'll get heart
there
disease.
you go. Yeah, there you go. That's right. Heart attack or InstaFloss. That's your two options in life. Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, David.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
guys for watching.
Conversation.
Thank
See you
you.
guys later.
See ya.
Peace.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That was awesome.
Awesome.
So much.